Hello everyone, I'm Extra Cheesy 87 and this is our fourth bonus video for Trails Into Reverie. It is story time with Tovi. Tovi's gonna read everyone a story. Now, Tovi is gonna sound exactly like I sound for some reason, but that's just because he's so reverential of me and my reading commentary skills. How do I read a book? Moonless Morn is very long. It looks like there's a chance it's long. Well, no, because I'm sure, didn't Red Moon Rose have like 30-page chapters or something? Because it had less chapters, and I'm pretty sure they were longer, so I presume we'll be here for a couple hours. Hopefully the book is good enough to justify those hours. 3 and 9 was good enough, for instance. So if it's as good as that one, that'll be cool. So alrighty. Guess we're just gonna jump in. How do I read books again? I know we just went over it, but like, what if I forgot? Alright, let's take a sip of the sauce first. Alright. Sauce sipped, throat cleared. Let's read. Chapter 1. Snowfall Encounters. The girl ran. Though her lungs burned with each step that crunched in the packed mountain path, gasp profound enough to hear even through the subdued effect of snowfall, she ran. Her attire no doubt contributed to her body's protest, for there was far more of her tan skin to be seen than there was cloth. It starkly marked her as one who hailed from a foreign land, yet the coldness in her eyes and coal shade to her hair did equally as much to meld her into the darkened storm surrounding her. Enough to fence me in from every angle, but the wind! Oh, it should have been story time with Gaius! Tells him to keep on ahead. Wolves with frames 3 times larger than any normal pack were in pursuit, their eyes bloodshot and their chase unrelenting. In the midst of the chase, the girl would pivot and fire a bolt from her bow gun. This had no effect. Is it werewolves? Is it bow gun? That's like a crossbow, man, and you know what crossbows are for. I mean, if we had a vampire novel, we gotta have a werewolf novel. This had no effect in slowing our pursuers, but neither did it slow her. I guess it is also Moonless. Oh, it is about fucking werewolves, man. When the moment was right, she would twist in the air, fire, and let the momentum of her shot thrust her backward till she landed and pushed onward. Her agile, wild motions held the practiced polish of one who had long challenged and prevailed at mountainous terrain. The wolves pursued despite this, charging over the brethren felled by her bolts with an obsession that elicited from her strange twang of compassion. That they didn't stop now, she imagined, must admit they couldn't stop, that someone had set them on this trail and made it a matter of survival. That's not the only one only one with my life on the line here. But compassion would never bring triumph over obstinance. Patting the book secured in her waist pouch with her bow-held hand while clutching a cylindrical trinket around her neck between her other bolt-ready fingers, she continued. That's a complex sentence, man. It's got a lot of... Oh, that sentence felt very wordy. The elements knew something of obstinance. The thinning air as she climbed upward, the wind-swept snow, now more ice than powder, the numbness of her upper body from both despite the fire of her spirit and the blood pumping through her legs. She could persevere, but whatever the mountain was or wanted, would be. What would be was a tall, rocky face with a jut that was far too tall and far too angular for her to do anything but stop. A seconds-long pause was all the wolves needed to surround her. Said that was enough to fence me in, she grit between chattering teeth. That didn't mean I want them to. The wolves crept closer in a slow, knowing manner, well aware that there was no path to freedom. The girl dismissed the sight to deliver a questioning gaze at the cylindrical trinket around her neck. To her, this trinket was more than a simple accessory. It was a tried and true companion. What to do, she mused for precious seconds. Too much of a gamble. The bowgun in this moment useless. The wait for death through sunken fangs inevitable. The mastermind who formulated this chase had won. Or so they would have, had Adios not smiled down upon her. As though to reward the girl's fortitude, a crisp gunshot rang out in that moment, sending a flurry of falling flakes scrambling. The 2 wolves collapsed on the ground in the seconds that followed, gouts of blood staining the pure white around them. Startled, the wolves shifted their focus rapidly from their prey to their fallen comrades, then again to the source the direction of the sound. The first to find it seemed to fall with a thundering clap of a second shot. "Run, now!" cried a young man's voice through the howling wind, no doubt the gunman. What if it was a wolf, though? What if the wolf can talk and he got your ass? Indeed, the lupine blockade, that's a funny phrase, that had seemed so insurmountable was now weakened enough that her own weapon could finish the job. She gave a small nod to her unseen savior before rushing into the rest of the pack, firing bolts between the sound of more shots from afar. A swirling storm carried with it the scent of explosives, indicating to the girl the gunman's weapon was no modern orbital gun, but an old-fashioned muzzleloader. Which begged the question, how were the intervals between firing and reloading so unnaturally short? "There's a path over here!" After confirming she had made her escape, the gunman slipped his upper half out from the shadows of a nearby crag, and gestured for her to follow. Having traveled across many lands and encountered all manner of people, she knew from a glance that he was the single most reliable defender she could have chanced to meet under the circumstances. He cut a fine figure with silvery hair that melted into the snowy mountaintop. His face seemed near chiseled from marble with its sharp lines, accompanied by a hunter's eye that pierced as well as any one of her bolts. Even the muscles that covered his tall frame were lithe and sculpted through practical training. He was, as she saw him, the fresh beauty of the mountain and its crystalline storm in human form. Peeking through a heavy fur coat was the muzzleloader she heard, confirmed to be just the one despite its rapid fire. Strange in this mystery, however, was how familiar he felt to her, even when they had never met before. She followed him to his rocky shelter, but perhaps the motion-perfect high from running to survive had already left her. The moment she felt safer, the book at her waist slipped clumsily from its pouch. Her hands weren't free to catch it, with one hand still clutching the bowgun and the other the trinket. The wintry-haired young man instead used the stock in hand, reloading his weapon to shift the book's course, pushing it to land in his own bag and saving its pages from being dampened by the snow. "Thanks, guess you saved me in my book." "You're welcome, only for the book. The jury's still out on if I saved you." As he said it, the attention turned towards the wolves. They had done more than recover from the surprise attack. A fellow pack had joined them, swelling their numbers a great deal. He took a closer look at the new situation through the scope of his rifle, a slight twitch born from narrowing his eyes as he focused. He then turned to a small animal trail to his left and waited for the girl to nod in understanding before entering it. He was dubious of their chances against a larger pack. So was he, she suspected. Certainly running down a route so familiar to their pursuers wouldn't get them out of their current predicament. I might have stacked the odds a little more in our favor. Taking the cylindrical trinket with both hands, she ran to the opposite direction from the young man, towards the wolves. "What are you doing? We gotta get to the—" The young man's shout was drowned out by a sudden light, shining through her fingers from the trinket's own engravings. What followed was a fog thick enough that even the most perceptive of wolves could see no further than their own snout. The fog continued to thicken, the snowstorm assailing the animal trail calmed to a gentle flutter, then to nothing. "Time to go then," was all the girl said in response to this. "This way, right?" Yeah, we head through here and take a right." He had never witnessed anything like this in his countless years on the mountain. He didn't know what to think of it. She noticed. "Something the matter?" I just wasn't expecting the fog to roll in." Someone up there must really love us, huh?" Yeah, someone up there." Lady Grinket get assassinated by Kevin. The young man guided her down the trail under snowless skies until they reached a flat housing scant trees. Beyond it were more powder-topped mountains and steep cliffs. The threat was no more. "Hard to believe we lost him so quickly," he muttered, suspicion evident in his tone. "It's amazing how fast you can go when you can see." She dismissed his misgivings, instead looking him over while considering his clothing, skill, and where they had met. All 3 points had taken her to a clear conclusion. "Thank you for your help," she began, "but there's something I'd like to ask if you don't mind." "I suppose I don't mind." His hesitation was the only thing that shook her certainty, but only for a brief moment. He must have been a little different from the others she knew, for the rest of his traits were unmistakable. "Are you Matage?" His eyes widened in surprise for a beat, then another, then silently he nodded. I feel like we've seen that word before. I don't know. Maybe. Chapter 2, Mountain Hunters. In the northeastern part of the Zamurian continent, where the impact of desertification was relatively minor, a culture considered unique even by the standards of the widely diverse region. They worship Mount Whitecrown, a place known to have fostered countless ecosystems despite its harsh environment. And through living in harmony with this mountain, they gave birth to technologies and philosophies found nowhere else in the world. The Matage were hunters of legend, known in song to have slain even the likes of dragons. Yet, though once quite known far and wide, and though revered for their dedication to their art through their descendants, they were slowly becoming one of the many forgotten cultures scattered among the eastern edge of the continent. While their ways were still handed down even in modern times, the Matage's village was nearly empty, its population comprising mostly of the elderly. The youth had left the mountain to use their traditional methods in more lucrative areas, like through the Bracer Guild or as mercenaries for hire. Their legacy was fading with the times. As of now, however, two relics to represent it were still featured prominently in the village square. One was a wooden carving of the mountain spirit, worshipped at their yearly festival. The second, added in more recent years, was a stone monument engraved with the names and family crest of a legendary hunter, Olkis? The time was just past noon. On this day, a young man was standing with these relics. He stood out further still, for beyond his age and fine features, his hair carried a silvery tint to it rather than Matage's traditionally fair white. His hunting equipment lay at his feet, and leaning back against the earthen foundation that held these carvings, he stared up, not at them, but past them to the cloudy sky. Warming his body with sips from a gourd of amikaze. Already done hunting for the day, Chulon? Can't think of another soul who could keep up with you. An elder who had only aged with greater vigor and dignity as the years went on called out to him. He was the chieftain, and he acted as both the elder of the village and director of its group hunts. In the afternoon, quotas met in the income of the village's stable. Chunlan replied, hanging the now emptied gourd at his waist as he did so. Us Kavardian merchants take just about anything we sell. Chunlan Eisen was the last of the villagers who could still be considered a youth. In the eyes of the chieftain, whose role was more to see to their continued existence, this made him more valuable than the high-quality prey they often sold to supplement their needs. That's some fine work indeed. I'm sure your father would be very pleased. Flattery isn't going to get you anywhere here. I'm afraid my answer's not going to change. Knowing well the conversation that was poised to follow, Chunlan reached down to sling his equipment back over his back, and his gaze turned up towards the mountain, towards home. I assure you, I meant nothing by it. I'm simply grateful we have a young, strong, sure hope I'm strong. Wouldn't doubt it for a moment. Couldn't possibly be otherwise with that kind of confidence in me. Chunlan remained cool indifference throughout. For most, the sight of a village elder scrambling to avoid displeasing a fellow so much younger would be quite the spectacle, but the chieftain had his own reasons to persist in this behavior. He had no desire to be chieftain. In fact, he never desired the position from day one. There were many others who were more qualified than he, but one by one, these potentials left the Matage's village for greater prospects. After a time, there was only him. And while he fulfilled what he could of his post, his mind was often occupied with finding someone suitable enough to relieve him of it. Chunlan was aware of this. How could he not be with such an unabashed display, making him twice as reluctant to accept anything he said. So worry about your father said, best not let it trouble you. Why not instead take a look at the people around you? Though the young man had no intention of doing anything, simply because he was asked, Chunlan, perhaps guided by the blood running through his veins, did so. He saw pelts drying in the sun. He saw elders maintaining their weapons, back strong. He saw two men, jovial from alcohol, sharing heroic exploits while flaunting old wounds. All things he was familiar with, all things he should have been used to. These people recognize your strength, but still, you come here every day and... I'll keep it in mind. Excuse me. Chunlan made for the village entrance before any further discussions could be made, being very conscious of the fact that he was running away. This was all he could do. Before he could tell the chieftain what his plans for the future were, he would have to discover them for himself. His residence was a wood-framed cabin of Western design that overlooked the Matage village. Though a bit of walk from the rest of its residents, he never once entertained the thought of leaving the home his parents left behind. It was discovered to be found in these solitary walks, things like the signs of spring's return after a long, harsh winter, or the subtle traces of exotic game having passed through. Chance encounters, new discoveries, and the like were abound throughout this simple trail if one were to look closely. Father taught him, and these were never without value. Today's encounter required no cunning to notice. Any Matage would have sensed the presence of so many animals, their number being far higher than what was usual for the area. And a reason for it. Chunlan loosely placed his right hand around his rifle, known as a Surube among the Matage, a modified old-fashioned model from the Calvard Republic. He wasn't quite certain what to make of this anomaly yet, but he would nevertheless have to investigate further and report his findings to the chieftain. When he found its source, he realized he needed more than a loose grip out of caution. He needed to be ready to fire. The presence of wolves so great a size was already a shocking sight on Mount White Crown, never mind the number. Rarer still was the person they were chasing, a girl whose clothing marked her as one of a foreign land. The lessons of his past echoed in his mind as he shifted silently into the shadows of a stone crag. Listen, Shunline, the Matagi aren't solely hunters. We're protectors of this mountain, its bounties being blessings from Adios. His finger was on the trigger. The rest he muttered to himself aloud. He must keep it free from impurities. He squeezed. He didn't queeze, alright? No queasing allowed. And upon a fiery burst at the head of the muzzle, hot lead shot through the air, evaporating the snow it passed through in an instant. Just as he intended, the bullet appeared as though it were sucked into the torso of the first wolf, before exiting through and down in a second. Chaos rippled through the pack, but the young man knew this was not certain victory. Wild animals are driven by survival instincts above all else, and any break in their formation would be mended faster than most humans could react. Run now! Fired a second shot. The girl reacted by turning his direction till their eyes met. Through snow-tossed winds he could see the intelligence in her gaze. More than that, even to an unexpected degree, she was foreign. How could he not see confusion under these circumstances? Fear for her life, anxiety over her surroundings, whatever was happening in this mountain, he had complete clarity on what it was. Shinlan's first true interaction with the girl came after she entered the crag, where he awaited her. Where he saved a book that had slipped from her possession from falling into the snow. She made it, he thought to himself. He had indicated a path of escape for her to follow, which she did with excellent haste. Must have been some girl to have held out against those beasts. The sunlight was dyed with a hint of red as it looked down upon Mount White Crown, where a large pack of wolves were racing along a high road. Several other packs, all being driven in the same direction, collapsed into this larger one until they had melded into a massive swarm. A few slugs behind them stood the one responsible for stirring them so, leaving them with no way to go but forward frantically. Scattered all around him were the corpses of boars, bears, and fellow wolves. Here I have myself another mountain whose beasts of revered repute have failed me, the man muttered with boredom, born from tedium, eyes scanning the cold carcasses arrayed at his feet. The man's solid frame, wrapped in red, and his hair, black and shaved thoroughly with unique patterns, would be enough to catch anyone's attention, but it was his skin that dwarfed those otherwise uncommon features. His face, neck, hands, palms, nearly every visible part of him, save for his ears, was tattooed in arcane symbols that unsettled the mind. So thoroughly covered was he, certainly that it would not be a stretch to think that if his clothes were stripped and head shaved bare, he would still be covered. White Crown, eh? And who thought to crown you? His lips curled into a sneer as he looked towards the mountain's peak. No more game to hunt, you're as good as... what do we have here? Something caught his attention. He watched this something through the snow with great intrigue. His sneer twisted into a smile of twisted delight. No, you were having the fun elsewhere. I think there's still hope for you yet, Mountain. With a single effortless thrust, he pierced through a lone wolf that dared to resist him. His stone-tipped spear digging into the ground and forever pinning it to the earth. He then turned to walk with eager footsteps as he moved. A gentle red glow alighted across him through his tattoos, and the grin on his face mangled until itself into a level of malice and thirst no human should have been capable of. And let's take another sip of the sauce. Let's see, that 2 chapters, 18 minutes. There are 17 chapters. Oh fuck, man. Oh shit. Oh god. That means we're on track for 3 hours. Oh, there are no short ones either. And one, I think, said 10 pages there. Alrighty. So far, so good, though. I enjoyed the first 2 chapters. The kind of switch in perspective and was kind of neat. We're seeing the same event from multiple perspectives, or 2 different perspectives. I guess technically 3 different perspectives, kind of with the last guy a little bit. Are you Matage? Shenlong had been struck with an unease that what was happening on Mount White Crown was only the start of something bigger, which is also why the simple question struck him so. He wasn't sure how she, a clear foreign girl from somewhere very distant, had immediately recognized him as a Matage, even when the local lands had long forgotten how to make the distinction. His features held no particular tells, nor did his clothes. Not even his sharpshooting was anything. He felt different enough to reveal he was one of a fading people. What was another reason he hesitated? He did have the right. Did he have the right to call himself a Matage? The girl tilted her head with curiosity as she waited for Chunlan's answer, knowing this to be no time for ambiguity. He nodded. He knew it. He appeared to mean that. For the first time since the ordeal, she expressed a small, warm smile. How'd you know? I met one of you a long time ago, a vagabond. This too struck Chunlan. Some Matage were vagabonds back during their golden age, but now most remained close to the village. So few among them traveled that he was certain he would have known who she was talking about right away if it were true. Of course, it could have been one acting as a hired gun or Jaeger while still touting their heritage to make a name for themselves. He couldn't know. However, so he decided to dismiss the topic in favor of their situation at hand. I mean, it's still... I mean, it's a little sus that she's like immediately knows just because it's like, oh, I met, you know, one of your people once before. Granted, she is also like near one of their villages, so it kind of makes sense. Like if she has any knowledge of the mountain, that, you know, hey, there's some, you know, dude living out in the wilderness. He's probably part of the village, or, you know, the people. What was happening on this mountain? The wolves were the only oddity, surely he could sense it, leaving his body a hair tense and ready to go into a fight or flight. Well, he put some distance between us and the wolves. I didn't say we gave him the slip, but Chunlan intended to invite the girl to the village, but she had already started walking. Hold on a minute, you should... Thanks for the help, but now that I've used this, I need to hurry, and I wouldn't want to... And I would have just been around for fun, and I'm meeting someone. The girl clasped the cylindrical trinket hanging from her neck, tempting Chunlan's eyes to observe it closely. He traced the strange symbols etched along the thing, it being a bit larger than a flute, and it brought to mind the sudden fog that had helped them escape the wolves. A bit larger than a flute? That's bigger than I would have expected. I was thinking it was like, you know... like finger-sized. She threw a damn flute? She's got a flute hanging on her neck? Maybe it's a small flute? This is a strange question, but do you have anything to do with that fog? How about we start with whether you're coming or going? I sure wouldn't mind having a Matage with me, so I won't say no if you are. He asked due to him naturally following her without realizing it. This had less to do with curiosity on his part and more to do with the need to see she was safe, an instinctive habit that was less helpful and more patronizing than unnecessary. We'll see, he responded, though he still continued to accompany her. There was something about this girl, the way her calm demeanor felt more tightened than relaxed, that led him to believe she felt backed into some kind of corner. Is this because of what happened so far, or what could stand to happen in the future? Mount Whitecrown responded with silence to his inner musings. How much should I tell you? Croaked the girl as she looked down at the cylindrical trinket. It was more a statement than genuine question. It was strange for her lips to remain tight, Chunlan thought, after he had already witnessed her gamble in the flesh, but there was no forcing it out of her if she wanted to remain silent as the mountain. How about we start with who you are? I'm Chunlan Eisen. Chunlan's fine. I'm a Matage, like you said. His gaze dropped from her to the muzzleloader in his hands. I'm Sayu, she responded. Unlike Chunlan, her gaze remained fixed on him, her voice never lacking in confidence. As for who I am, I'm a woodland wanderer. Was that the name of your people? Never heard of them before, but then again, maybe they aren't local. I knew she was a foreigner, but this absolutely confirmed that she was from somewhere far, far away. We're not really from anywhere. Every day we wander the woods and hills. You could say the journey itself is our home. Ah, so you're nomadic people then. Where are the rest of you? Something came up and I had to go solo for a bit. She stopped. That person I'm meeting is actually one of us. His huge is short and he's a little too overprotective for his own good, so I'm not exactly jumping for joy over it. Sayu then turned to look at Chunlan, awaiting his definitive response. And though she hadn't said it out loud, he knew that this was the point of going one way or the other for him. Do you want to make certain she was well and get more answers, or do you want to turn back and deem this a passing meeting between odd strangers? Chunlan also slowed to a meek stop. What use could he be to her, really? He couldn't even say he was a Matage out loud. Someone so indecisive really would someone so indecisive really prove to be of worth in whatever lay ahead? He was in a hurry, Sayu had said, but she still waited, patiently for a new companion to wrestle with his thoughts. Against his doubts, the desire to ensure his safety was slowly winning out, as it so often did, but the silence stretched as he failed to put anything into words. As this went on, there was a subtle shift in the wind coursing through them. Wind? Wind? The sign of a snowstorm on the horizon. I think Chunlin began before stopping himself short. With he inside, he felt the oncoming storm, only to also realize this was no simple storm. It was a beast. The echoing, deafening roar they heard next made it clear something supernatural was drawing near, causing Chunlin to draw in a sharp breath in surprise. He had felt this presence before. There was no way he could ever forget it. No way he could mistake that ferocity. Killed his parents, 100%. I already know, I'm media literate. It had been years since he saw the beast, but the very weight of its existence was enough to be carried by the wind. Sayu's response was not one of surprise, but of action. She looked down at a cylindrical trinket, which seemed to pulsate with light as the beast's roar reached their ears. It's resonating. I was right about this mountain. There was no need to answer out loud. They both knew. In that moment, they were after the same thing. After sharing an understanding glance, they took off running up a nearby hill, heading straight towards the invisible storm. The closer they edged into their target, the brighter Sayu's trinket glowed. Where's the weird fog, and now this, Chunlin thought towards the ever-glowing light. Just what is that thing, and why is it reacting to the beast? Rather, why did an object from a foreign land react to a local beast from his own past? The thoughts continued. I thought I'd meet it again in a place like this. Those idiots must have a plan in mind. After a few moments of a dead sprinter, it appeared before them, dominating their field of view. Despite the tens of arcs separating them, they could both feel the overwhelming, wild force of its presence. It stood with the peak of Mount Whitecrown behind it, overlooking its surroundings, its form the very image of a king surveying his domain. It was a giant bear, evilly dwarfing any other most had ever seen, surrounded by a cloak of lightning. Every few moments, fireworks like bursts of electricity would crackle off its blue-white fur to display the immense power pressurized within that was so eager to surge without. The light given off by its flashes of power surrounded it like a halo, providing a contrast that emphasized every muscle, every sinew of its frame. I knew it was you, Chunlin growled. This was the one beast that 5 years ago had changed the entire course of his life, Raiju. It's like Raichu, but he's like a bear. Alrighty, so we'll read chapter 4 and then I'm probably going to take a break. Because doing more than 30 minutes at a time, probably not a good idea. Granted, I think, because I'm pretty sure I did like Red Moon Rose all in one sitting and it was a stupid idea. I think it was maybe 2 sittings, I don't remember. It was not a good idea. I do remember that. Yeah, I think by the end my brain was mush. Because even if it's not that many words, you know, reading out loud for like 2 hours straight can be, it's something. At least for me. Chapter 4, Dual Threats. Fate can be strange, fate can be fickle, and at times fate can be irredeemably cruel. Guided by the girl, Chunlin found himself face to face with a living symbol of the laws of his people. The laws he loathed, but would be pain to lose. Not a single person living on Mount Whitecrown who had not heard of Raiju. Since its first appearance 10 years prior, it had used its lightning to slaughter countless humans and animals, usurping the balance of power all throughout nature. Many Matage rose to challenge it and were injured or fallen, with none so much as finding its lair. It now lived as a symbol of destruction and greed, known to all as a true blight upon the land. Now here it was. Upon sight of this bear before him, the instincts he long sealed away were flickering through to the surface. It was an excitement that coursed through muscle, through flesh, through bone, the craving for a rematch, and, as he noticed with the trembling of his fingers over his rifle, deep fear. Name is Raiju? Sayu looked at Chunlin, puzzled over the name, but the more the cylindrical trinket glowed bright, her eyes shifted nervously. Up until then, she had only seen her act cool and calm. Now her eyes darted back and forth, with a mild panic between him, the trinket, and the bear. Sorry, don't tell me you came here looking for it. No, I knew there was a part of it here, but I didn't know it manifests as a beast like this. A part? Something to do with the cylinder? Thinking he'd light up and responding to Raiju, shining brighter and brighter the closer it approached. Chunlin couldn't quite wrap his mind around it. A part would indicate that once united, the beast and trinket would become whole, but what kind of relationship could there be between a monstrous creature of nature and a man-made instrument? Just what is that cylinder? Oh, I accidentally hit the button. Raiju roared. Chunlin, a flicker of exhilaration being elicited by the sound, cut himself off and turned his focus back on the beast. You're searching for a fight, aren't you? He responded with a mighty leap from the rock it stood upon, diving towards them. Sparks erupted from its body, with each print impressed into the ground. No, you're not the one it's calling to. Before Sayu could explain, a spear of stone as tall as either of them darted from somewhere, whistling easily through the air as it arced straight for Raiju. Beast stepped aside to miss the attack in an instant, but the spear held such thrust behind it that even the slight brush upon its side tore a hunk of hide from its flesh. Crimson stain began to bubble through its blue-white fur. The King of Thunder halted his advance, looking somewhere off in the distance, before stepping back with timorous hesitation. Then with a flash of light to cover its movements, it retreated back into the mountain. "Damn you, I'm not missing this chance! Get back here!" Chunlin cried, though he knew well it had made the wisest choice to save his life. Even still, having his unexpected rematch stolen away from him by an equally unexpected external force left him with a bitter taste in his mouth. "Chunlin, look out!" What? Whatever threat had chased Raiju off wasted no time in turning his attention towards them. Ducking the instant he heard Sayu's warning, Chunlin watched the stone spear streak over his head, hitting a splintering tree that was growing right in front of him. "I've never seen art like that." "He's coming," Sayu muttered in response. He who?" The two made their own retreat behind some nearby rocks. Sayu gripped the trinket around her neck, now weakened in its glow. Tighter than ever, she explained. While he listened, Chunlin used her binoculars on his person to scan where the spears had flown from in hopes of seeing who or what was behind them. "He attacks woodland wanderers and steals the artifacts we collect," she started. "And I assure you, won't be the first he's murdered. He's a berserker who spreads destruction wherever he goes." Binoculars revealed an unusual figure. He was tattooed with symbols on every surface of his skin, but his ears, even his hair, had similar patterns shaved into it. And as he stood, that playful smile on his lips betrayed no hints of the violent nature she was describing. "That undersells him. He's trying to murder every last one of us, and we don't even know who or what he is. All we have is the name we made up for him." Though far away, Chunlin was met with the man's direct gaze, one 10 times sharper, 10 times heavier than his own. Even through the lens, he felt a bloodthirsty aura that pierced through him as well as any stone spear that could have been thrown. It was terrifying. As he absorbed this fear, the man disappeared from view. Call him the Oni, the demon. Chunlin put the binoculars down, seeing that the Oni now stood only a few dozen arc from their position. Bear got away. No matter. There are times when business is better fit before pleasure. As if on cue from his words, the rocks around the two exploded. When he saw no blood-trailed remains among the rubble, however, he merely smiled in appreciation of their abilities. The gunshot rang out immediately. After did nothing to change this. "You got yourself an intriguing bodyguard, little mouse." The shot aimed towards the Oni failed to ruffle him in the least. Fear nor hesitation traced his features, but rather a conflict between calmness towards the circumstances and a desirous hunger for violence. A rock wall effortlessly burst from the ground to block the bullet before it could reach it. "I'm not interested in your weird tricks, Oni. We want to know who you are and why are you here?" Chunlin and Sayu managed to only just evade the rocks exploding. Now Chunlin, hidden in the bank of withered reeds, kept his finger on the trigger as he barreled their pursuer with questions. Also, he used Earthwall. That's pretty cool. He's a damn OG. The ease at which the man had blocked his shot left him shaken, but he recovered control and put on his brave front so as not to further shift the muzzle of his rifle with anxious trembling. The more ferocious the opponent, the less you show to them at your back. That was one of the iron laws of the Matage. The Stone Melter. I'd much prefer you call me that over any other unfortunate name you've given me. Why are you coming after Sayu? Why did you try and kill Raiju? He continued to fire off questions at the speed at which he reloaded and fired more bullets from his riddle, slowly adjusting himself to a position that would allow him to move instantaneously should he need to. Here to squeeze the life out of a little mouse and her whole mouse clan, if that isn't apparent enough. Their death shall be an offering to another clan, and to see this mission of mine accomplished, I've been gifted power. A stone melting exists for no greater reason than what I speak. By some of it at least, Chunlin could sense it as soon as the Oni opened his mouth, for it was in no way possible for the joy that split the man's face as he attacked Raiju to be under the guise of a mere mission. Yet he wondered if the Oni himself was unaware of how naked his desire for killing was, through his deceptive answer. Still, there had to be a reason behind it. A real reason. "That's all?" Chunlin responded. "And that sounds like a good enough reason to be on my mountain, so get off." Even as he said it, Chunlin pressed down and let the next bullet fly, right from his riddle. Leaping straight towards the Oni, he slammed his right fist into the ground in response, and more masses of stone lifted from the earth to form a wall that shielded him. An earth wall. Perfect. Coaxing the Oni into creating this wall had been part of Chunlin's plan. It Moving to hide in the shadow of the wall, Chunlin used the moment to grip his Nagasa, a special hunting knife of the Mitage, to slide into the man's blind spot and strike. Don't say more than that, little cub. Even as the light flashed off Chunlin's arcing blade, he felt a sharp stab of pain through his body. Yeah, I don't know if getting into close quarter combat with the guy would have been a good... I don't think that would have been my play, personally. Leaving his consciousness to swim through naught but blackened agony. It wasn't until his back slammed to the ground, arcs behind where he had been, that he saw the Oni's left hand was encased entirely in rock to form a heavy gauntlet. The blade found its mark. It's been a while since the last was scratched. The rock wall crumbled, revealing the Oni's twisted expression. He panted with excitement as warm lifeblood dripped liberally from the wound on his side. Parlor trick at best, but I like her spark. Fine warm-up before I take down that bear. That's how I go do all of our parlor tricks, Chunlin replied dryly. Sometimes we even like to use ourselves as decoys. As the Oni moved to close the distance between him and Chunlin, several bolts came raining down from above. He blocked them with the stone still wrapped in his hand, but by the time he returned his eyes to his opponent, he was gone. Like that too, huh? Too bad, but thanks anyway, Sayu. She won't thanking you. Now I've got proof of stone walls on a perfect defense. That alone is worth its weight in money to me. They're firing off another bolt to force more distance between them and the Oni. Sayu helped Chunlin to his feet. Couldn't he like use the earth to like grab his feet or something? That's what I would have done, man. Grab his dang feet so he can't get away. The two slipped into the thick foliage nearby. Chunlin could see the foreign girl was back in control of her emotions. That was the only way she could have known to step into strike without him saying a word. Looks like most of my reliable relevants got to see the guy's weaknesses too. As she said this, she pointed up to a cliff in the direction they were heading. There, Chunlin got his first look at the one Sai intended to meet on the mountain. Alrighty. So, we will pause here for a second for me, just to give me a little bit of a break. And then we'll come right back and do Chapter 5. Alright, where we get to see our BFF. Oh boy. Alrighty, so we're back. Let's get back to it. Now, it has been longer than I intended to take a break. It's maybe been like a day. Just because some stuff came up, and then I don't know, afterwards I just didn't feel in a good mood to record. I don't know. I mean, nothing like bad happened. I just didn't feel good. Like, was it in the right headspace for it? We were on Chapter 5, right? Yeah, we were. Alrighty. Chapter 5, Sayu's Fight. Chunlin followed Sayu's pointed finger towards a cliff that towered behind the Oni to see a man. Special delivery, Sayu, your BFF has arrived! There's that annoying as crap voice. As the Oni turned attention to the source of this new voice echoing through the mountain, the young man leaped from his place, the sun eclipsing his body with the stark shadows that made it impossible to see his face. Chunlin could see he was taller and leaner than he, and dressed in all furs, the hooded part further covering his wearer's face. But that was all he could surmise of him. Well, Chunlin supposed he could surmise one other thing. He knew how to fight. The Oni snarled as he formed a disc-shaped buckler of stone to fend off the oncoming drop kick. Damn true. That's cool. Drop kicks? Another damned mouse is going to nibble at my toes. Come on, you like the number? Makes no difference to me. The young man, however, simply used his shield as a stepping stone to spring himself into the air a second time. Bro, he's so much cooler than us. Your back's wide open, Scribbleface. Okay, maybe he needs to work on his one-liners. First twisting into the air, he then landed behind the Oni and launched a flurry of punches at this towering sun-reddened back before him. The speed of these attacks made it feel as though his fists had multiplied to deliver a veritable storm of strikes. Fine effort, but nowhere near enough. The onslaught pushed the Oni back to a stagger at most. He immediately straightened and kicked off the ground, soaring away and summoning a rock wall to cover his retreat. The young man halted in turn, jumping backward to put yet more distance between them. Just had to make a dramatic entrance, didn't you, Tao? Sayu chided with a smirk. No way, complete coincidence I showed up just in the nick of time, Tao answered while dodging a counterattack from the Oni, showing them an unperturbed smile as he did. He then added, I will say though, I'm glad I showed up when I did. Got to see something very interesting. Chunlin had no trouble guessing what he was referring to. It was the idea of using their villain's rock walls to stab him in his blind spots, just as he had done with his Nagasa. As Sayu put it, these earth balls were not the perfect defense, so they were made out to be on the surface. But Dao had also noticed something else, and I don't just mean the blind spots you were exploiting. I mean that those walls don't just come out instinctively when he needs them. Yeah, if we take advantage of that, he's as good as done, exclaimed Sayu. She then whistled, turning her relative's attention towards her as she made some sort of shorthand signal. The young man's hood bent forward as he nodded in turn, and then immediately he began launching sporadically timed attacks that demand the Oni's attention. Almost like you two share one mind, Chunlin observed. Guess he was worth meeting up with after all. Tell me about it, she agreed. Okay, Chunlin, let's move out. Sayu guided Chunlin to a nearby hill that overlooked a snow-covered slope. Atop this was a giant lump of iced balance, uncertainly with a avalanche worth of snow built up behind it as the frozen shape snatched the moisture from the air surrounding it. Dao intended to slowly lead Oni right to this very slope. Chunlin questioned this plan with a raised eyebrow. I get the plan, but he's not stupid enough to fall for such an obvious trap, is he? She returned the question with a cheeky smile and held up the cylindrical trinket to his face to answer his questions. No sense in me hiding what it can do to you now. I'm going to get things ready. You just wait for my signal. You'll know exactly where to shoot. I'm sure I will. Chunlin looked through his binoculars at the point Sayu implied. I mean, what are the chances that this Dao guy just gets, like, murdered? If he's off, like, fighting him one-on-one without the element of surprise? He then put them down and muttered to himself what an abomination this was of a man of the mountain while fixing the scope of his muzzleloader. At the same time, Dao continued drawing the Oni to their desired point in a merry chase consisting of attacking and retreating again. Yeah, what if midway through he just gets a damn spear to the head? Admire the way you so desperately cling to life, Mouse, the Oni growled, swinging a stony fist with a winning man's wild energy. It appeared he hadn't noticed his prey was intentionally leading him elsewhere. I grow tired of playing with you. Oblivion will suit you well. Now come here. Impatience building, he wrapped a massive wealth of stone around his hand and let loose a single punch filled with murderous intent, unlike any of the previous. A direct hit from such a blow would have been more than any human body could bear. And yet, in the next instant, the Oni's tattooed face twisted with perplexity. His tightened fist was not, as he expected, wrapped by a corpse, but rather swathed in the fur the young man had been wearing. Call that molting! See, I got some tricks up my sleeve, too. Having shed his fur garment, Dao flipped through the air, a provoking smile on his now revealed face, a handsome one with close-cropped, dark blue hair. He's an anime guy. Well kept through he certainly was, there was no doubting the wild air that accompanied it. His every gesture was lithe, feral, and free. Do this game and you're scampering all you like, the Oni snarled. By the end, you'll still be smeared across this mountain. He aimed his next strike towards the ground, controlling the fragments of stone that rose from it. He slung them towards Dao, bathing the young man in a merciless storm of shrapnel. Dao continued to move backward despite being pelted from head to toe, his movements keeping the damage done to a minimum as he maintained a safe distance between him and his oncoming foe. This gap was, in fact, one of the signals to his two allies that the Oni had arrived at the right spot for a full-on assault. Now, fully engrossed by the shift in Dao's tactics, the Oni had no time to wonder about the 3 bolts from a crossbow that flew over his head in the next moment. Chunlin! Ready, Chunlin replied to Sayu. His weapon's scope was fixed on a small chunk of ice with frozen stalactite hanging from its belly. Mere seconds later, fire spat from Chunlin's muzzleloader, the bullet biting into this most vulnerable chunk. The point destroyed, the weight it supported was now too much to bear, forcing a massive mound of ice to begin collapsing inward on itself as it threatened to hurtle down the slope. As if to follow the lead of the crumbling ice, a range of snow covering the face of the slope followed. No simple landslide would have been a threat to the Oni and his wealth of experience, but this massive force would be like a beast the size of the mountain itself shedding its wintry coat. Chunlin can see his light dancing through the fog at places along the incline. 3 exact locations where Sayu had shot her bolts, the slope began to tremble with greater force. The moment the light and fog given off by the bolts faded, the earth truly awakened with a terrifying moan. The ice and snow at the top of the slope now fully collapsed and rumbled down the mountain with a speed in which nothing could escape. What about us? We're on the mountain? The Oni cried with amusement. An interesting gambit, but The monster of a man had no time for retorts, yet he realized it's too late. Before he could finish his sentence, the avalanche had rushed downward to swallow his legs, the buildup around him increasing at far too great a speed. for him to summon a new wall of stone to protect him. Cold, wholly violent waves continued to crash into him, engulfing his form until even his vibrant tattoos were buried beneath the silvery, white drifts. By the end of it, he had been completely entombed beneath ice and snow. Did we get him? Chun-Li called out. Sai shook her head. I doubt that I'd kill a guy like him, but I don't think he'll be getting out anytime soon. Great, too immortal even for an avalanche. But, that's how you managed to pull off one that size. He was still in awe of what he had accomplished with just a few bolts and a bullet, but the cause versus the effect was still on a seemingly inconceivable scale. I adjusted the moisture along the slope and made conditions ideal for the snow to slide, answered Sayu as she removed the trinket from her custom slot in her crossbow. Returning it to around her neck, each bolt sent had been infused with a kind of energy from it before being fired, and Chun-Li now realized they retained this connective energy even after being fired off a good distance away. Oh, so the little cylinder was the key. Figures, Chun-Li muttered. Yone was after it too, but even still, I can't believe it's the power to adjust the moisture of the whole face. Chun-Li's need for answers was now at its peak. Because they're on a mountain. If there was some kind of paranormal event behind it all, perhaps understanding it would help him learn more about the mysterious origins behind Raiju. Atta girl, Sayu, you're playing God of One. You're good though, right? Not hurt anywhere? He's not gonna pop out and like hit me in the chest with a spear or nothing. Tao hurried over to the two of them, rattling off the questions and commentary, once close enough through a chomped leaf that stuck out of his mouth. His hair may have been a different color from his relatives, but their clothing had similar patterns, and their suntanned skin held that same natural shade. He, however, had opted to paint over his in a way that very much stood out. I'm fine, I was more worried about you, Tao. Just where were you? Sorry about that, he replied with a humble smile. I'd actually stopped by a village near here to gather some info first. Some luck though, huh? First some wolves running wild, then the Oni showed up, but they should be behind us now, still. Tao took Sayu by the shoulders and folding her securely in his arms, he fixed Chun-Li with a gaze. You a local hunter maybe? Thanks for helping Sayu. I should be the one saying thanks, Chun-Li replied. Your Tao, I think it was. Your Sayu's what, brother? Close enough. We're technically cousins, but we may as well be brother and sister. Oh no. Oh no, your fates are sealed. Trails rider salivating. Yeah, you might have heard of me. Tornado Dao ring a bell? Nope. Sure doesn't, but it's a pleasure. Chun-Li offered his hand, which Dao took. Dao's other hand was off to the side, beside, preventing the stranger he only just met from getting too close to her. Oh god, he's got a complex too. Oh no. Oh god, the Trails rider's eaten. Chun-Li followed up. Well, I've got an awful lot of questions after this, but we can save that for once we're not outside. Weather's only going to get worse tonight. He then looked up at the sky, watching as the wind carried clouds of snow. To him, it said the spirits of the mountain had seen the whole affair, and they were in a frightful rage for it. Oh, we're going to be here forever. So far, it's pretty good. The burying the guy into the mountain did kind of have, hey, can I copy your homework 3 and 9 energy? But it's not bad. Nestled in the northeastern corner of the Zamurian continent loomed Mount Whitecrown. Its body played mother to a richly unique culture and ecosystem. But though loved deeply by the people who made her their home, she was not merciful in turn. The many mysteries and phenomena she held seen as events worthy of worship for some, while mere fables worthy of dismissal for others. Made life very difficult indeed, but still, they continued to live on in her embrace, accepting that this was, and would always be, her way. There were those who insisted there was a connection between the stories of the mountain and the mysterious disappearance of the greatest Mataga who ever lived, Hyun Olcus, and it was this day that Chun-Li was about to come face to face with the truth behind this long-sung tale. Though a threat looming in the shadows, all while discovering something more about himself than he ever thought possible. And all through the words of someone who came from somewhere far away. That weird little thing is called the Cylinder of the Frozen Sky. I've never seen an artifact before. Don't they kill you if you got those? As the sun set up, Mount Whitecrown wailed as wind and snow kicked up to bid these new invaders unwelcome. They had to move quickly, which is why the three of them, Chun-Li, Sayu, and Dao, now huddled around a campfire in a small cave, the blizzard raging on just arcs away. Dao, who had lost his fur coat during their lively encounter, had taken to piling liberal amounts of food. I want to say food. I want to say food. It's wood, but it's not food. It just looks like food to my brain. Of wood into the fire. because I was at war, because I'm like, my brain wanted to say food, but then another part of me is like, it's not food. Why would he be putting food in the fire? And then a third part's like, well, wait, actually putting food into a fire could make sense, but it doesn't make sense within the context of this sentence. Oh no, shut down, exe has stopped working, open task manager, restart process. According to the two foreigners, the cylinder of the frozen sky was capable of adjusting the concentration of moisture in the air, or even controlling the weather within a certain radius. This made quick work of the mystery of how she was able to create fog from seemingly nothing or banish snowstorms with a flicker of light. And that's how you're able to cause an avalanche that huge? Chunlin asked, though he knew the answer already. I mean, also, isn't there a chance that if you were to cause an avalanche, it would, like, you know, create a ripple effect and cause a much greater avalanche that, like, killed everyone in the mountain? I mean, avalanches are usually not known for being all that, you know, well controlled. I concentrated its power into bolts and adjusted the moisture of the snow where the bolts landed. If you know how it works, it links up well enough with the weapons. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt with magic nonsense, though. Well enough. You make it sound like it's not something beyond belief. I almost still don't believe it. Cullen's surprise wasn't just at the artifact, but at the series of events that had occurred in unbelievable succession. The whole day had succeeded and astounded him utterly, from the nomadic tribe responsible for this artifact in hand to the man who hunted them with an expression of malicious thrill. And how did this girl seem to know so much about the world, so much he didn't know? He had never experienced the things she seemed so indifferent to in all his years on the mountain. And with that in his mind, he further wondered if these were the kind of things his old friends who left the village were now experiencing on their journeys. Realizing how little he knew about the outside world startled him in one sense, but in another it left him curious for more revelations. Dao gave a warm laugh as he wrapped his arms around her shoulders to pull her in as he had done before. And she somehow, no matter how bad a situation gets, she can always think of a way out. Dao, we've talked about this, Sayu whined as she shrugged him off. Even the small interplay between the two of them that had no doubt happened countless times before felt like something that had come from another world entirely. Their every word, their every interaction served to overwhelm Chunlin, making him realize just how small his existence truly was, dwarfing his spirit more than even the mountain that rose high above them. But his loyalty to the mountain remained, even in this bizarre, enlightening befuddlement. He was a Matage, and though that, the weight of the situation was twice so, inspiring him to rise to action and stop the incoming threat from encroaching upon his small world further. Don't have to wrap my head around it all, but are you planning to get to the part you mentioned back from Raiju? Chunlin puts the discussion forward, not just to cover the erupting conflict within, but provide himself some direction. He needed to know precisely where to go in order to discover the role he'd have to play in the reality unfolding before him. Yeah, confirmed Sayu. It needs to be complete so we can offer it at the shrine, and once it's complete, it should give us the power we need to take down the Oni for good. Went on to say that she had known the part needed was on Mount Whitecrown, but until she saw it, she was unaware that it had fused with indigenous life, yet that changed nothing, for they had to retrieve it fused or free. His new direction failed to anchor him as he hoped. He met a fated, beastly rival he hadn't seen in years, only due to the influence of outsiders who revealed it to him what gave the beast its legendary status. It was nothing he could have possibly predicted. Came with a strange sensation, one he wouldn't quite be able to put into words if prompted, that his past had run off without him, morphing and distorting, under the watchful eyes of others till it was no longer a narrative to call his own, even if he had to be the one to confront it in the present. He continued on. It was all he could do. Right, that Oni is an entirely different problem. With Raiju, at least there was a tangible connection, distorted as it was, that cemented these implausible circumstances in reality. The Oni, though, made him feel as though he had been thrust right back into the realm of fantasy. I mean, dude can use rocks. Or bear has lightning powers. I mean, in universe, they both kind of make sense. I mean, I guess somebody summoning rocks without the use of an ornament is abnormal. Actually, I guess that's more abnormal than lightning bears, I suppose. Granted, I guess we don't technically know he's not just using one, but presumably it's some special ability he has that's different, because reasons. They could not afford to let that monster of a man remain the dominant party between them. Taking up his rifle, Chunlin wordlessly stepped away from the fire, turning towards the entrance, of which there was only a swirling vortex of night sky and icy snow. Where are you headed off to all of a sudden? Dao stood in Reached out to Chunlin, gripping his shoulder to stop him in his tracks. He ain't the only kill Raiju, so I need to hunt it down before he rises from the snow. It'd be a disaster if he snatched that part before we could get it. When he turned to answer them, he was met with two unexpected expressions. Expressions one normally wouldn't present in the face of someone readying themselves for a fight to the death. They were smiling. Unexpected though they were, he found comfort in that being their natural reaction. Dao answered, "Well then, we're all in the same boat. Wouldn't hurt to bring along someone like me if you're open to having a partner. Hope you race the Onis to the finish line. And I tell you, got a mean kick. And since Raiju has a part of the artifact inside it, we both should know our way around it." Sayu added, "I doubt either of us would slow you down." Both of them were right. There was no good reason for Chunlin to be so possessive over this hunt. And there was no greater recipe for seeing its success than cooperating with two who may know the beast better than he ever did. "I don't doubt that," Chunlin responded, "but the King of the Thunder and I have a history." Why was he being so stubborn about this? Group hunts were a Matage tradition. They were more than familiar to him, but here he was, impatiently eager to rush ahead on his own. A part of him was embarrassed by this confusion, and their reactions were among the few things in this moment rooted in coherence. "Why do you want to go alone?" Sayu asked. "How come nothing seems to shake you?" Chunlin responded with a question of his own. Again, he hoped their answer would anchor him in some way, push him in a right, sound direction that would help him feel at ease the way they did. Sayu answered without hesitation, "Because my goal is to end with meaning, not just to our people as a whole, but to me as a person. So all that's left to do is achieve it." Makes sense. It didn't. I like that. Makes sense. I don't fucking know what the hell she just said. He didn't know anything about her, what truly drove her, or what gave this mission of hers such meaning that it drowned out all hesitation. But he could at least, however invisible, however intangible it was, feel a foundational strength in her answer that brought him comfort. Dao sought to comfort him in another way. "I don't think too hard about it. Sayu's an unusual one. Even I have trouble understanding her sometimes. For now, let's just boil it down to us wanting to have your back in a fight. That good enough?" Between the talk, Dao would retrieve some things to prepare for heading back out before returning to Chunlin's side to clap him encouragingly on the shoulder. Yeah, good enough for now. At the time, Chunlin was still aware that the very thing causing his heart to hesitate was also calling up a memory buried deep within. What was the name of this chapter, by the way? Thus spoke a woodland wanderer. Alright, so we'll read chapter 7, then I might take another little break. We might get up to 8. I need to check something real quick, though. Or respond to something, I guess I should say. Alrighty. Chapter 7. One people, one purpose. Sayu could barely see Chunlin's back in front of her. The snow clouds above were thick enough to obscure the moon, and the wind blew hard enough to drive fragments of icy snow into even the tiniest gaps of their clothing. The drifts piling up the ground were now up to their knees, sapping their strength with every step. Februaries of Mount Whitecrown meant the blizzard struck with the ferocity of a temple guard, repealing any who had dared to trespass on their sanctuary. In the years, it only made them more violent. The Matage took this as a sign that the mountain spirits were angry at humanity for desecrating the blessings bestowed upon them by Adios. It would be easy to dismiss this as superstition, but the way in which the mountain swallowed up its prey and snow bordered on unnatural. Even the sound of each blizzard's fury was enough to drown out the most primal of screams for help, making rescue a fool's dream. In Mount Whitecrown's most recent display of rage, a single point of light marched through. It consisted of 3 travelers, speaking volumes at their peak to only just hear one another. "Damn, it's cold out here. Sure was an idiot for losing my furs. Hot too. Want to trade coat style? Don't be silly, Say. No way I'd let you catch cold. I got clothes to rub me down and warm me up, so I'm doing just fine." In the editor's note, his ass was not doing just fine. Chunlin led the way, with Sayu and Dao trusting the light of his lamp to guide their ways. None were dressed appropriately for such an environment. Chunlin had given his coat to Sayu, leaving him with a thick, though not quite thick enough, sweater to battle the elements. Sayu was still woefully underdressed even with the coat, but she was still much better off than Dao, who had fashioned a pitiful covering by cutting armholes into a hempen bag. "There's a Matage lodge just up ahead," Chunlin urged. "Just hang in there." The only thing that inspired them to continue this terrible trek was that, though the route itself was short, Though the foreigners had no defense against the cold, they knew as woodland wanderers would how to navigate uneven terrain well. It was only this knowledge that helped to conserve the valuable energy they needed to keep up with the natives of the land. They reached the cabin around midnight. I almost don't know how we made it through that, Chunlin heaved with relief as they entered. We got time to rest if you need it, though it probably won't be too comfortable. The cabin had been constructed as a supply stop for those climbing the mountain, rather than as any formal lodging, consisting of a single room that groaned with every push of the wind outside. This is when we pivot to Evil Dead. You thought this was a story about fighting a bear that killed your parents, probably, and some crazy guy who has magic powers? Nah, evil spirits. Book of the Necronomicon. Let's go. I lost my spot. It did so even as Chunlin opened the door. He could feel the vibrations of its planks, even with his gloves. Yet ramshackled, it appeared on the surface. It remained firm in its foundation, indicating it was regularly cared for. Chunlin's mind wandered to Raiju once they were indoors. He imagined that based on the direction it had gone when fleeing the Oni, it was likely hiding somewhere near the summit. That lined up with what he already knew of the beast. No one had found its lair in the areas inhabited by other bears, and the area in question showed evidence of lightning damage. The best course of action, if they were to find it, was to resupply and strike out quickly to the summit by dawn. Chunlin turned to his companions. More stuff left here than I was expecting. Take whatever you can carry. Huh, so you can shove a short blade into this wooden hollow thing and make it into a spear, Dao observed one of the weapon among the stock. That's called a Fukara Nagasa, Chunlin explained. It's an offshoot of the knife I have with me. A Kuro, I guess I should say. While he was busy gathering anything that was vital to their survival, Sayu took a look at their hunting gear and specialist equipment in the furthest corner of the cabin. She was quietly curious about her surroundings, both from a simple, innocent perspective and from a deeply intellectual perspective. Oh yes, fur! Where have you been all my life, you beautiful bastard? Dao, on the other hand, dived into supplies with abandon, eventually caressing and curling up among a pile of worn furs. There was a fire pit in the center of the room. Okay, I was gonna say, wouldn't the furs just be cold? If they're just, you know... But I mean, I guess the fire wouldn't be active, because I mean... They're not going to be as cold as they were just sitting outside, but they're not going to be warm innately. You know, if there's no heat for them to hang on to. Looks like we've got an Irori, too? I'll go ahead and get a fire going. Thanks. Wait, where'd you learn that word? Chillum was puzzled as he continued sorting his supplies. Already strange enough that you had me pegged as a Matage at all. I learned Irori from this book, she responded, removing her book from the pouch at her waist, and the traveler who gave it to was a Matage. Same person I told you about before. It was the book she had been so particular about when they first met, entitled Fundamentals of Indigenous Cultures. Chunlin found the binding was quite aged when he took it into his hands and flipped through it, but it still held up quite well over the years. This book is over 25 years old. The information would have been out of date to more modernized cultures, but all that was written on the Matage was still very relevant, making it all the more apparent to him that their lives had not changed with the passing of time. The book contained the names, lifestyles, and beliefs of various cultures and ethnicities Chunlin had never heard of before, as well as objective insights from their author, adding a beating heart behind its logical prose. Sayu and Dao's people, the Woodland Wanderers, were also mentioned. I found your people, Chunlin said, reading on with interest. Sound like a pretty peaceful group the way you're written here. He wondered again how the Woodland Wanderers had such a rare artifact in their possession, and why they were guarding it. But most of that seemed to have been answered at full volume during their windy trek. The Woodland Wanderers had an agreement with the Septian Church. They would collect any artifacts the Church's people could not reach, and in exchange they were given the freedom to use them at their discretion, indulging in their many benefits. I'm going to say that doesn't really sound like the Church I know. Before handing them over to the Church at designated shrines. The book itself only gave vague hints as to this part of their background. Instead, it was full of excerpts on how they supported themselves with woodcrafts and assisted merchants during peaceful times, as well as brimming with notes detailing their relationships with other cultures and their day-to-day aesthetics. I doubt anything here is new to you, but this book itself is special, Chunlin guessed. That's right, I'm only here today because of it, and the person who gave it to me, Saya answered. You might say he and it are motivation. Must be nice to be that motivated by something. For me, it's more... She and Dao had found their own purposes in the ways of their people. Saya in particular held a deep faith in her heritage, and that was the key in her reasoning for being on this mountain. Chunlin failed to resonate with that even now. What was he on this mountain for? What inspired him to be here in this moment? No matter how far he looked within, all he could see was a deep, unending emptiness. It's fine if you can't relate, Thao's voice snapped back. Snapped him out of a meditation that was longer than he intended. Now back to his senses, Chunlin looked to see the young man now stretched out over straw and Sayu crouched in front of the Irori. Sayu's the only bookworm we got, so even in us, she sees the whole world differently. Sayu's bigger perspective has helped me find my way more than a few times, Tao continued, deigning to give Chunlin a charitable pat on the shoulder. So I get what you're going through, but you don't gotta set on something like that. You don't have to be set on something like her, have any deep meaning in what you're doing right now, if it's just not there. And if you can't think of anything that motivates you, just do whatever you're doing now, and maybe in time the motivation will find you. Yeah, you're right. Chunlin was moved by the words that were precisely what he needed in the moment to ground him. But now, all we can do is what we were planning to do. Keep moving. He did not know when he would be free of the chains of uncertainty he found himself wrestling with. What he did know was that something had changed about the uncertainty in itself, and his new companions were the catalyst to that change. Perhaps this would further lead to something, perhaps even lead him to the exact same thing that birthed motivation in them. Their silence between conversations, they watched the quietly flickering fire had been deafened by the wailing winds outside. But as the fire grew, so did its voice, and Chunlin began to think, even through a blizzard too great for words, there was still a straight, clear path. How many other? There's 17? Gosh, 17. Okay, so we're almost halfway. Which, I mean, we're like, what, like a little over an hour? Okay, so we'll probably clock in at about 2:30, which is about what Red Moon Rose was. We'll see, though. Still liking it. I'm liking Chunlin's character. Pretty cool. Listen, Chunlin, before we go after Raiju, there's something I want to say, began the young boy's father. We Mitage follow the ways of our people. In doing that, we respect this mountain and stand watch over it for beasts. Do you know why we do that? Not the first time he asked. In fact, he had asked this countless times, but never had he asked it while they were on the way to slay a beast, when even Kilun Ulcus had failed. Rather than ask why his father, the current chief in the legendary hunter's absence, would bring it up now, Chunlin repeated his usual answer. His father never asked anything without reason, so the answer would come with time. The blessings of the mountain are the blessings of Adios. We protect them so as to show our thanks to her. That's right, we believe this, and we weren't wrong for it. I think we have a greater purpose than even that answer. We should have pondered that. What that is we hunt Raiju. What, does the old answer mean you've been full of it all this time? His father laughed. Sorry, Chunlin. I meant to save this conversation for after you become a man, but here you are, hunting Raiju with me. Makes for a fine opportunity. Lessons continued as they ascended the mountain and were soon near the midpoint of White Crown, an area where bears were known to live. No one knew where Raiju made his nest, so okay, he's taking him with him on the hunt? I don't think that's responsible. Especially if they've already established that the Raiju has killed a legendary warrior. I don't know if you should be taking someone who's probably like a kid with you, but whatever. I'm not a parent, I guess. Personally, that's not something I would do, but you do you, dude. An area where bears were known to live. No one knew where Raiju made his nest, so their only option in tracking it was to go to where it was last seen and hope there were tracks to follow. We were able to see tomorrow because we take the lives of other creatures. These creatures are no different. They fight to survive, and sometimes that means hunting as we hunt them. Even Raiju, as it casts its monstrous shadow over the whole of this mountain, is no exception. Right, Chunlin responded pensively. After 20 years of hunting with Kyun, I came to a realization. We're on equal footing with the beasts. We may not be able to see eye to eye with them, but we understand that we face life as they do. We face life? What does that mean? Chunlin was familiar with the concept of giving thanks to life and taking it, but there was something abstract about the concept of facing it. He was also not the best at wrapping his mind around the philosophical, preferring straightforward paths with simple direct answers. Anything that strayed beyond that risked him getting lost in his own thoughts. I don't think there's a single answer to that question. The journey to try and find your own answer is as important as the answer itself. Without the journey, life cannot be faced. It would be meaningless. Meaningless? That's right. Face life, accept it. Your struggles will reveal guideposts in your journey that only you can see. Young Chunlin thought about the obstacles on the path that made his life. At the same time, he considered the lives of others who had chosen different paths. Wonder what their answers came to be through it all? Had those who left the village run away from their ways of the people, or had they chosen to leave after finding something that gave their lives meaning? But was there meaning in becoming poachers or trophy hunters for the nobility? He doubted it. This is going over my head, he finally admitted. Knowing that is a victory in itself. Pride blinds us from our correct path. A similar expression sat on his father's face. There were moments when he was deeply stern, but for now, as he presented his son a question even those twice and thrice his age would wrestle with, he presented his softest side. What does that have to do with Raiju? Chunlin asked. Sure you already know this, but the hunt for a Raiju is a dangerous one. The sounds of their footfalls in the snow halted. Chunlin's father used the pause to give his son time to consider the reason behind this talk. What I'm saying is that we might end up being the ones being hunted this time, he continued. The risk of us losing our lives is higher than any normal hunt. Perhaps the odds are even against us. Do you understand what could happen, Chunlin? He nodded in response. He understood well, but he didn't want to put it into words. Accept the reality. Even if this hunt doesn't end the way we want it to. I thought this might be my last chance to tell you that. In his short life, he had come to have a very simple dream. Hunt Raiju with his father, protect the mountain, and surpass Kyun. It was a way he could show the other vagabond youths his age that there was meaning in the path they had not chosen. How did this new dream of thought his father proposed fit into this dream? Was it a new one that deviated entirely, failing to fit the curated mold of the path he chose? The answer did not matter. It was not long until Chunlin lost it all, his dream and his father. What he found among the broken pieces of his life that came after was not any true answer to his father's question, but rather a realization that he indeed could not accept reality, leaving only a festering hatred in his heart. The rising sun stained the snow atop Mount Whitecrown with a subtle gold, and the lone Matage and the two woodland wanderers carried more than their weight in supplies as they continued to heave and climb. The blizzard itself had blown over, but strong gusts continued to persist, bringing with it sheets of snow and what may as well have been the same thing. Each sheet reflected the morning glow, making them feel as though they were being assailed by brilliant motes of pure light. As planned, they arrived at the summit just as dawn was breaking. Their speed was aided by the fact that the woodland wanderers were light on their feet, even when weighed down by seemingly endless amounts of gear. Now that they were dressed properly for the weather, they could tackle the cold with a speed that put even a local to shame. They still knew nothing about Raiju's location beyond it being somewhere within the vicinity. It was unclear whether they should first scout the place out, planning their next move carefully, or if they should strike as soon as they caught sight of the beast. Chunlin and Sayu continued to discuss options as they moved. No matter how he tried, Chunlin could not calm himself down. It had nothing to do with doubt in his or his companion's abilities. It was that the yet-to-be-seen foe they were hunting had the kind of strength that made even the most thorough plan seem insufficient. We're finally gonna have the last part. It's been divided for so long. Right? Dao chimed in agreement with Sayu's musings. And if things go smooth enough, we might even finish up that bastard who keeps tailing us. We might be able to face all the people he killed. I'm kind of excited to see what it does when it's complete. Blade of Thunder Heaven sure makes it sound like it'll be impressive. I don't know if I want to be near the Blade of Thunder Heavens when it's completed, man. Oh no. Well, began Chunlin Riley. He'll only be the perfect test of him once you find out, won't he? Neither Sayu nor Dao were particularly distracted by the suggestion. They remained focused, their eyes looking straight ahead, with no immediate dangers on their mind to stand in the way of their goal. In Sayu's case, retrieving the last part for the cylindrical artifact was not optimism, but the next step that was simply going to be. The woodland wanderers and the values they acquired from their tight-knit environment fascinated him. On the surface, their traditions were simple. They patrolled the eastern side of the continent, retrieved artifacts, and passed them along to the Septian Church. And yet each cycle of this journey was riddled with value and supplemented by countless customs that had long been passed down from generation to generation. Even as Sayu and Dao made slight deviations from their people's past, they balanced it by continuing to respect and adhere to their many traditions and values they had long loved and accepted. What did he value? As he observed them, Chunlin thought back to the days when his father was still alive, when he had a simple, pure goal. When he had that goal, he never felt a moment's resistance against the ways of the Matage. What do I have now? He wondered aloud. His purpose was shattered, leaving behind a constant feeling of questioning the nature of life itself and a puzzle he was no closer to solving now as he was then. only thing sustaining Chunlin through his days was that it felt natural for the body to breathe, eat, and sleep. Meaning these two was an outlier to his daily routine, and one that sparked something in him he had not felt in a long, long time. Could these strangers who possessed what he lacked lead him to reunite with the feeling of having purpose in life? "Look out!" Dao's shout snapped Chunlin back to his senses. In that same instant, he felt a light jolt and something impacting his body. "Dao!" cried Sayu. Dao had shoved Chunlin and Sayu aside, and a heartbeat later, lightning flashed and an explosion near him. Something struck the youth like an invisible wall, throwing him to the ground, and smoke rose from his skin as convulsions coursed through his body. It was the worst possible outcome among their discussed options. Raiju had attacked first. "Dao, you alright?" "Yeah, I'm just glad you're okay, Sayu," Dao croaked. "Body's numb, but Granny Haku's charm is nothing to sniff at. I think I can even stand." Sayu realized and vocalized that the paint he had been covering his body was a wart that must have been an insulating resin. After confirming that Dao was well and calm, Chunlin retrieved his binoculars. "Sorry, Dao, let my guard down," he said. "Don't worry about it. If you notice, you might not be able to dodge it. Just focus on finding it." He wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. He knew if the King of Thunder could see them, then they could see it as well. There, he found his longtime nemesis. It was a fitting throne for the conqueror of the land and wielder of lightning to its very claws. The highest peak of Mount White Crown, looking down at them, was Raiju. Alright, I'm going to take a sip of the sauce, and I'll read another one before I take a break. Oh, it's 19 pages. What? Yeah, we're going to take dual sips of the sauce. The rare double sip. Alrighty. Over there, see? That's where the avalanche occurred. What a mess. I think they've been happening all over lately. Blizzard was over and the morning sun was shedding light upon the fresh powder of snow along Mount White Crown. Observing this as they climbed through one of the mountain's trails, where two men were wearing puzzled expressions, one tall and thin, the other short and stout. Both of the very picture of the traditional Matage in their straw hats and coats, each wielding a spear and hunting rifle. "Don't touch the snow! No!" There was an avalanche in itself that was not surprising. They happen often, yet being so used to them was also why the locals were keenly aware that something was off, about this one in particular. They could fast recognize impurities that threatened the mountain, and right now this event was quite impure. Their steps hastened as they approached the side of the avalanche. Even from a distance, seeing how natural it looked only heightened their unease. "I heard Chunlin was talking to Chief yesterday," the stout Matage piped up. "You seen him around here since then? I know he hunts around here sometimes." Chunlin wasn't known for late-night hunts, but none had caught sight of him since the day before. There was another factor of the scene that unsettled him. He'll learn his ways from the man trained by Kyun, or he learned his ways. "I think he'll be alright," reassured the thin Matage. "I get why you're worried. Boy's had a lot on his mind. If that were to ever come into play mid-hunt," he turned down the chief's offer again. "I don't blame him with how things went with his father, but at the same time, our kids surely do have it rough." While they felt for Chunlin, they also couldn't treat it as though he had nothing to do with them. Their youth were leaving the village one after another, and not just that, they were struggling with the concept of what it meant to be a Matage. It was this that they had put their people in the dwindling position they were in now. "Got word there was strange lightning to be seen on the mountain last night. Think Chunlin went to get revenge on Raiju?" They floated more questions and speculations between one another as they arrived on site, starting with the thin Matage. This was no natural avalanche. Then who did it? I mean, it could have been Raiju. That was a beast of thunder, but there's gotta be more to this we aren't seeing. Guess it doesn't matter. I'm just worried about Chunlin. They had no idea what imaginable threat from another land was awakening beneath the snow. Chunlin Raiju, name of the boy buried me in the name of my prey. Beneath snow and ice, the weakened Oni pondered inwardly the names the two Matage were speaking of. And the more he pondered, the more a power inside of him ignited. Hear the sound of thunder and the echoes of those names he now hated and hungered more, furthering the perfect catalyst to reawakening the rage that fueled his every waking moment. "What's that light? There's something under the snow?" As these fires continued to burn brighter and brighter within the Oni, his flesh began to quiver with the need to hunt. Terrifying light once more glowed through the patterns inked across his body. Chunlin, Mouse, Raiju. Chunlin, Mouse, Raiju. Oni awakened as his burning emotions pushed through his sensory threshold. Steam erupted from the snow like a geyser, revealing his body enveloped in a mysterious light and startling the two Mitage. Something's coming out of the snow. Never seen anything like this. Is it a monster? The men, despite all their experience, were struck with a fear that left them falling on their behinds and wailing before the creature that appeared from a bed of steam and ice. He only spared the two a glance as their mouths hanged agape. Chunlin, the Mouse, and Raiju, where are they? You know Chunlin and Raiju? Cried the thin man. He worked to regain control of his senses once he heard the man speak. He then leveled his hunting rifle towards the Oni. Chunlin and Raiju are the perfect prey for me. As for you two, simply an appetizer. I don't know what you mean by that, the thin man seethed. If you plan to harm someone in the village, then you are an impurity of this mountain. Now get! Now get. Damn true. Damn true, buddy. He then fired as his stout companion returned to his feet. Exactly. Shoot first, ask questions. Never good, buddy. He then returned to his feet and aimed his spear. There was no hope of the bullet reaching the Oni. I mean, like, here, this is the scenario. Some dude shows up out of the snow and ice, says, hey, where's Chunlin? He says, you know Chunlin, and he immediately shoots him. I mean, I guess he does say perfect prey. So I mean, you have a I don't know if you have reasonable cause to try and blast this man, personally, because he does say, now get, and then immediately shoots. There was no hope of the bullet reaching the Oni. In an instant, it had been blocked by an earthen wall, vanishing in a spray of harmless sparks. Where'd that rock come from? The Mitage cried. This man, he really is a monster. Anything like him managed to get so close to the village. Before the eyes of the Mitage, now once again, overwhelmed with terror, the rock wall crackled and crumbled to the ground. It did not appear as though the Oni's intention to do so, but it at least fulfilled its purpose of shielding him from the bullet. Heroes were not fully recovered. Trifling issue. Resolved with a brutal level tone. I have a small feast right here to warm me up before I hunt them down. Oni did not hesitate to feed his disadvantage into his hunger for violence, stoking the flames of his fighting spirit till it became a full rage for the hapless men. With it, he summoned a spear of stone. What is he? Is this the curse of the mountain? Who's that together? If we don't stop here and think what'll happen to the village. Oni kept closer to them, making the dim red light glowing from him dance before their eyes. Despite its crude make, the spear in his hand seemed vicious enough to end their lives in an instant. All they could think of, this man before them, was that he might have been a demon from a Gehenna. The morning air of Mount Whitecrown would have split with the sound of a useless gunshot and wild shrieks of death were it not for the roaring wind. A feeling of impending disaster caressed Chunlin's cheek as they kneeled in a cave at the summit to keep out of Raiju's sight. It had nothing to do with the beast he was facing now. Something else now violated the mountain. Something's got the spirits of the mountain in an uproar, he muttered. The damn spirits. Frickin' there. Can't trust a damn spirit. Also, rip to those two guys. Unfortunately, they made the mistake of being in a novel. A Trails novel, people can die. Because you're not on screen. So your ass is grass. You should have tried to show up in engine. Then you're safe. Kind of. Something's got the spirits of the mountain in an uproar. I feel it too, replied Sayu. I felt this presence plenty of times before. Though the trio found Raiju, they were in no position to implement the plans they conjured along the way. Only the Oni was awake and likely headed towards them had it insult to injury. You already up? Cried Dow in surprise. We're running out of time. Chunlin nodded. Yeah, let's take down Raiju before he arrives. No way I'm letting him steal this kill from me now. Damn kill stealers. He did not know how long it would take the now freed demon in human skin to pursue them to the summit. In every second battling, breathing, even thinking was a second wasted in an unknown countdown. He could take days, he could take hours. Let's be quick about this, no distractions. Right. No time to go back to the cabin and think more on what to do. Chunlin agreed, reviewing the goods they carried with them from the cabin. They're all limited in their function, but some were indeed brought as countermeasures against the Raiju's incredible power. Question was, would they be enough to stay them from the jaws of defeat? time for Chunlin to put his knowledge as a Matage to the test. It was a strategy he'd been wondering for years how to apply in his own life, a strategy he had not used for years, a strategy that he left behind the day of his father's death. I think we've got a plan, he started. Have you heard of the Makigari tactic? Makigari was a group hunting tactic that was deeply rooted in Matage tradition. In essence, it involved one or multiple members acting as guides, Seko, who would surround it to prevent escape. An aggressive offensive would then be utilized to lead it to a specific spot, where the sniper, the Bupa, or Bupapa? Bappa? Bappa. Let's say Bappa, would finish off the cornered beast. The thing we did earlier, basically. It was a tactic generally carried out by those who had long hunted together, as it hinged heavily on both the leadership of whoever headed the hunt and implicit trust between the rest of the team. It was a difficult tactic to pull off even then, yet it had to work with Chunlin's new companions. I got no idea, replied Dao. Chunlin explained in detail what it was for following up with a personal anecdote. It's the way we hunt, me and my dad. Tried it with Raiju a long time ago. Actually had one over on it back then, but... well... This we're much better equipped and we're up one person. I think we can make it work. The reality was that not a single other tactic came to mind. Chunlin was deeply concerned about their ability to coordinate. Even if he had enough confidence in his own skills to compensate, it would be difficult to sync up with Sayo and Dao on a technical level. With them being raised to completely different cultures, change things too drastically for it to work? Sounds good, Chunlin. Let's go with that. Sayo was surprisingly quick to voice her agreement to the plan. So we got the traditional methods of the Matage, an artifact, and thunderproof equipment to work with then. Up until now, Sayo had been a thinker, a logical individual. Chunlin fully expected her to reject the idea and propose something of her own. Surprise must have shown in his face as he continued. It's not impossible. We just need to minimize any quirks you have that might impact our cooperation and cover the rest of the equipment. One person's problem to solve is everyone's problem to solve here. The encouragement came with a smile, another surprise. Chunlin supposed she believed in this tactic more than he did. I mean, you guys basically just did that against the Oni guy. So, I mean, it doesn't seem that crazy you'd be able to do it. She was right, of course, that both sides were in the same awkward position of having to find out how the other one worked in a short time. She was also right that this could be solved by deviating just slightly from the traditional form of the tactic, and utilizing the things they had, the equipment and the artifact, to cover the shortcomings. A vagabond told me, hit the unexpected with the expected. Or hit the unexpected with the unexpected, she said. Certainly they were doing just that. Alright, Dao piped up cheerfully. If you've got your endorsement side, then I don't see any reason to not back it up. So you think that the vagabond is the legendary guy dude? Because they didn't say he died, right? They just said he like disappeared and they presumed that he died to the Raiju. I don't know if the timelines, but I'm assuming... Because like they keep mentioning this guy by name. And you gotta presume there's some reason the Kyun guy's important. That does seem kind of weird that he would just like fuck off and leave his village, but, you know. Characters do weird things in the Trails games. He then chided Chunlin playfully about having more faith in his own plan, for no plan goes well when its proposer lacks proper faith in it. Dao must have accompanied Chunlin's expression of surprise for him to say it. Dao was more brawn than brain, but he was very perceptive of others' emotions, meaning he knew exactly what to say to help someone who was wavering at the time. That chiding was just what Chunlin needed. You're both right, he said. You're just as caught up in me, so I'm not going to put my trust in this plan and you, or I'm going to put my trust in this plan and you. No more doubt as to whether this will work. It's time to execute their very own brand of the Makigari tactic. Most compelling 19th page in literary history. By God, what did they mean by this? Alright. So, we'll have another break for me, and we'll be back to start the second half of Moonless Morn, which was not about werewolves, potentially. They never really explained the wolf thing, if I'm being honest. I didn't really get that. Because it's not like, because the Oni guy, I mean, I don't think he was controlling the wolves, and if he was controlling the wolves, how is he controlling the wolves? I don't know. The wolves possessed by the mountain? Maybe it's the mountain was trying to get her? I don't know. But alrighty. We'll be back in a second. Alright, we're back. Also, we've changed who's telling the story. It's Oliver. He's gonna read everyone the second half. Yeah, exactly. Of Moonless Moonless Morn. How do I read books? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we are on chapter 10, the Makigari. Raiju's habitat was the perfect place for this beast that topped the food chain to call home. It sat at the mountain's highest point like a king would his throne, the black stormy clouds whirling overhead in a natural royal crown. Though through thunderous applause did it create its weapons, and its subjects below, its prey never failed to succumb to it once stricken. There was just one thing the beast did not realize about this place, that its terrain, impregnable on the surface, was also the perfect environment to set a trap. There were two paths to reach the summit. One was at the end of a long, spiraling trail that looped around its peak. The other was a straight, steep path surrounded on both sides by high rock walls. First of the hunters who came to claim Raiju's life appeared from the spiraled road, shouting at the top of his lungs a call unique to the woodland wanderers. "You sleeping, Mr. Bear?" Dao shouted, "'cause I'm ready to wrestle." Dao leaped from rock to rock, his unique hunting call being shouted between taunts and insults. In a bag slung over his back were a number of single-shot rifles from the cabin. I don't think the bear gets shit talk, if I'm being honest. In a bag slung... That reminds me of a joke from CS1 where it was at the start of the game, you're fighting some wolves, and Laura kills the wolves, and her end of battle quote is that you're going to need to train a whole lot more to beat me, or something along those lines. It's like, lady, you're fighting wolves. What? Like, what are the wolves going to train for? Plus, they're dead. You killed them. That were relics of a fallen kingdom. His cries were used in the past to intimidate meek rabbits and fleet-footed foxes into submission, but Raiju was no small prey and showed no hint of fear upon hearing them, because he's a damn bear. This, however, was well within the realms of expectations. Drawing one of the smaller rifles from the bag, he made a blistering show out of firing a nearby rock. Raiju paused for only a moment before roaring in turn, fur bristling from head to toe from this mortal threat. Perhaps it still possessed memories of being hunted by the Matage as a normal bear. Whatever the reason, the sound of the shot was enough for it to understand its position from hunter to hunter. Hunter to hunted. How was a tough guy act now, you big furball? Dao continued leaping from rock to rock while dodging Raiju's impulsive lightning strikes. After throwing his spent rifle so that it stood upright on the ground, he pulled a second one and fired without hesitation. This one hit its mark precisely, causing the King of Thunder to howl upon being struck. The bullet was too weak and Dao too far for it to pierce through the beast's thick hide, but this too was expected. Raiju sent out a flash of lightning as an instinctive counter to the pain delivered, but it was strange. Rather than deliver the devastating shock it meant to, it passed through him harmlessly instead. It really worked. Dao grinned with a pleasant surprise. He was stuck in the upright rifle he discarded after use, allowing the lightning fire to pass through him, it, and into the ground. He was positively giddy with the discovery. "Ah, you're a genius, Sayu. I never thought to use these as lightning rods." I wouldn't try that personally. As long as he positioned the spent rifles like so, he could creep closer to Raiju and never have to worry about the more elemental properties of its offensive. I've got as many of these as I got shots. Now, time to show what woodland wanderers can really do. Dao belted yet another hunting call, and with every shot fired and rod placed, the weight on his back was lighter, allowing him to move at an ever faster pace. Man, they got how many rifles they have at that place. He moved in a circular motion, confusing the bear as he led it successfully towards the other path to the summit, sandwiched on both sides of the rock walls. "Yeah, I guess no matter how strong it is, still got the brains of a beast," he muttered to himself. Once again, why are you being so mean to the bear? You don't gotta insult his intelligence, he's just doing his thing, man. He muttered to himself before calling out to his companion. "Headed your way, Sayu." "I'm ready, Dao, bring it on." While still gathering its electricity for yet another counterattack, Raiju was guided into the straight and narrow path. It was met with a sudden barrier of mist that bathed the beast in its own sparks. "Got it!" Dao shouted. The barrier Raiju stumbled into was not a physical one, but rather a cage of energy strung between countless arrows stabbed into both sides of the rock wall. Moisture from the air glistened off the arrows' exposed tips. "I've done this many at once," Sayu began. "That doesn't mean I can't do it." The barrier formed from the fusion of Sayu's energy with the cylinder of the frozen sky's power was, in essence, one of pure fog. The more Raiju tried to force its way through this barrier, The wetter it became, causing its natural electricity to short out. Any attempt to step into it caused a wealth of pain. But yeah, it's just as bad, Sayu affirmed, shooting additional arrows behind it and filling them with more power, expanding the cage that much farther. Now, even if it were to turn around to run out of the corridor, it could no longer do so without sustaining considerable damage from its own thunder. Haha, I got it pinned down. Think the rest of the plan's gonna go this smooth? This won't stop it for long, Sayu responded, but it should hold it long enough for Chunlao to give the signal. Raiju could not escape without passing through the cage of fog, but despite having been transformed through possession of an ancient artifact, it was still a wild beast at heart. It had no concept of surrender, only survival, and would persist even if its only route to tomorrow would do it harm. Roaring wildly, the beast threw itself into the cage wall, blooming a constant fountain of sparks from its massive body. Idios, crazy thing's gonna cook itself alive! I haven't seen Chunlan's signal yet, Sayu reported. I don't know if I can hold it much longer. The cylinder of the frozen sky slotted into her crossbow cycled between losing its brilliance and pulsing with flashes of blue light. Hey, don't break that shit. Kevin was a damn Grail Knight and his ass got chewed out for breaking an artifact. You're gonna end up in the, you know, church underground prison. They're gonna, you know, open up the sanctum underneath all the churches and you'll never be seen again. You'll be walking down that staircase forever. Each time electricity surged through Raiju's body, it flickered brightly in response, almost too brightly, as though the cage and the beast's resistance were pushing it beyond its capabilities. Sayu knew that putting any more power into it would risk the danger of an explosion that would leave her far worse off than their target. Realizing this, Dao refused to stand around and do nothing. Dao had one other source of protection, a leather cloth from the cabin he covered in glass powder and resin paint on his body. Wrapping himself from head down with this repurposed insulating cloak and protecting himself with gloves made from the same material, Dao bounded through the cage of fog and closed in on Raiju. Flashes of lightning scorched the robe, but he pushed forward until he was directly before the object of their hunt. Dao, are you crazy? Nothing crazy about standing in a cage made by you. Alright, Raiju, you're in for a real shock, because it's about to get unbearable for you. Alright, fuck this guy, man. Alright, I'm joking. You get props. I'll give you some character ranking points, Dao. I don't know if they're gonna be ever come into play. I think if any character would potentially show up in person, it would be Chunlan. He seems kind of cool. I think old Dao and them are maybe I don't know. I mean, it's what, like maybe 40% of book characters show up for real. Maybe 30. You know, Ayn, Toby, they're real. Gambler Jack, I think, is like kind of real, but he doesn't show up in the games directly, other than in Sky 3, kind of. Obviously, Roselia and Swin and Nadia. Yeah, there's a chance. He then threw himself into the body of the beast, lashing out with protected fists. Though the attacks he landed were of no real threat, the insulated strikes triggered waves of electricity that surged through it with each devastating punch. This works way better than any gun worth the dive, Dao cracked before taking stance and drawing in a long breath. Landing his feet before the flinching king of thunder, Dao focused on every muscle in his body, and while filling his lungs with clean mountain air, became one with the environment's natural flow of life energy. Only when this reached its peak did he spring forward. Dao kicked off the ground, air trembling around him, till Sayu could swear she saw snowflakes dancing from his body as he sent an incredible punch into Raiju's chest. Bro, when the hell's Chunlan gonna do anything? My man's getting that maybe he is a Trails character, getting completely upstaged in his own story. I mean, I guess technically Chickadee was introduced first, but most of it's told from Chunlan. Well, like the vast majority, it's from his perspective. This alone was enough to send tremors through his whole form. This secret craft, Shin, could mean many things: heart, core, quake, deity, and was among the ultimate techniques in a martial arts style created by the Woodland Wanderers. It required synchronizing every part of the body, bone and muscle and all, and compressing one's strength until one forced this dense power forward like a coil in a trap. I mean, is it that different than the Taito punch? Because it kind of sounds like the Taito punch. Is it a new martial arts, or is it just a Taito punch again? It's just the Taito punch again. Certainly this kind of precise, powerful technique spoke to the wisdom gained through generations of journeying and surviving the wild. Can't believe it, Dao, you mastered Shin! Sayu followed up Dao's attack by sending a shower of bolts from atop the rock wall down upon Raiju. Because the Taito punch did break that wall in Sky 2. I think a double stone wall or a bear. I think the double stone wall is more impressive. So, Dao, you got some training to do, buddy. Dao took the chance to send another blow to its throat. As it fell back, it no longer saw the cage's walls as a concern, pivoting to escape its hunters through fog and singed fur. I thought I'd kill it, but it looks like we put it on the ropes. Sayu cheered into the corridor to Dao. Are you alright? I'd love to tell you I am. My gloves are done for, Dao responded, raising up his arms to display his gloves as he did. Can't keep this up much longer. Okay, we gotta keep it busy, so I'll take over on the offensive. Where the hell is Chunlan? What the hell? There was a hint of hesitation in her voice as she agreed to this. She was already pushing the limits of the cylinder of the frozen sky. Dao's craft was also one of great strength, and she doubted her crossbow would have nearly the same stopping power as it. Not seconds later into this train of thought did the sign they were waiting for make itself known. A deep bass sound echoed off the mountain, carrying far and strong despite its low pitch. It was proof the two of them had fulfilled their role in the tactic. That's the conch cell! Chunlan's ready! Sayu exclaimed. He sure kept us waiting long enough, but he's got me all fired up for round 2. Come on, Sayu, let's take him down for good. Right. Sayu descended. She released the section of the cage between Raiju and the summit. Doing this would help Sayu to amplify the impact of her attacks as she concentrated much needed moisture into each bolt fired. He then reunited with Dao and their backs against the still existing cage wall, blocking the other path downward. She unleashed a final goading strike at the beast's back. Sayu and Dao followed behind it as it ran, believing their companion ahead would be able to exact the next stage of their plan, driving Raiju back up towards the highest point of the summit. The king's throne would soon become its tombstone. Chapter 11, to mark the hour. He knew they would guide Raiju to him, though it defied logic. Chunlan had such faith in his new companions that even as he waited and waited, the hand on his muzzle loader never trembled with anxiety. He remained calm, even as the moment that would decide its fate approached, blew in his conch cell and pictured their daring, triumphant smiles in his mind's eye. Signaling with such loud sound gave his position away and was tantamount to suicide under any other circumstances, but he wanted to drown out even the roars of the very beasts they hunted. He wanted to be found. He was confident. He no longer feared, and it was all thanks to them. The conch cell summoned hope to him as he heard the calls of his companions, following the booming footfalls of this sworn enemy. Sayu and Dao were acting as decoys, laying a trap with the intent of driving the King of Thunder into Chunlan's range. At the top of the spiral path Dao had used to ascend, the woodland wanderers set the perfect trap, a modified bear trap to shower it with water and shards of metal. There was no better method to continue throwing Raiju's natural abilities into chaos and stopping it in its tracks. And if the beast were to leap from the mountain's cliffs into the spiral path down below to retreat, be welcomed still by more traps and weapons set by Chunlan. Finally time, though I never thought it would happen like this, thought Chunlan. He was hit with a mixture of emotions brewing inside him, so many that he could not concern himself with labeling them all. Or most of them. Of these, one unexpected emotion manifests more clearly than the rest. I don't feel any hatred towards Raiju. I mean, it's a bear. I mean, you know, I can kind of get the desire for revenge in some sense, plus he is a threat to, you know, everyone else in the natural ecosystem, so killing him I think is fine, but like, at the end of the day, he's just a bear. He didn't really have any malice in his heart. Never once since the time he lost his father to the beast did he ever feel hatred for it. Not really. Not in the way he thought he did. He felt loss and grief upon losing the last of his living relatives, but in his heart of hearts he saw his father as a true Mitake who fell after fighting for his life on equal terms with the mountain. His father bit his flesh, his blood, shrunk it among its blessed nature. His blade was simply unable to surpass the survival instincts of his opponent. Yeah, makes sense. So as a good viewpoint, or good worldview, Chunlan. How could Chunlan turn such a natural, beautiful thing into a grudge? How could he let the fear of his father's death consume him to the point that he forgot that not all was truly lost? What motivated Chunlan in this moment was a desire to complete what had been started by someone he loved. That was all. It wasn't vengeance for you, he thought of his father. Still don't fully understand everything you said back then, but I'm here. A life facing a life, and I'll continue facing it with all that I am. Chunlan, this mild understanding was enough to leave him content. His companions from a foreign land restored in him a sort of hope that his years past were not in vain, but rather guideposts that brought him to this very moment. The moment when his days of simply breathing, eating, and sleeping from sunrise till sunset would end. The moment where he realized he was still alive. Here they come. Chunlan heard an explosion of thunder from the rock he hid behind on the spiral path. Above him at the highest point of the summit, Sayu and Dao's voices shouted in response to the conch shells as they continued chasing down their hunt. Not a few heartbeats passed before Chunlan could sense Raiju's presence directly above him. He then put all his weight into giving a rope in his hand a single sharp tug, leaning as he did so. On the end of the cliff above him began to crumble. A single boulder that rested on the corner of the sheer peak had been yanked free of its position. And with support wholly lost, the throne of the Beast King trembled ominously, before collapsing under the beast's weight. It was a good thing he had seen Sayu's power as she buried the Oni in the snow. Sayu and Dao had not blocked the mountain path just to give Chunlan time to set a few traps, but more so that he could turn the entire area into one massive similar trap to what he witnessed before. Any observer, he may have made pulling a rope to trigger the collapse of a cliff look simple. What he did, however, was to delicately balance the boulder on a rod beforehand to leverage the rock in the direction he desired. It was almost a miracle he could get it ready in the short time Sayu and Dao had to stall their target. Raiju. Finally chased to a dead end, Raiju slid down the summit among a shower of falling rock fragments and snow. Only 15 arcs up, not enough of a fall to kill it, but Chunlan had prepared its landing point with caltrops and other traps to pin it down. Every fiber of his being cried for him to end it then, yet, regrettably, reality often makes a mockery of even the best laid plans. Raiju was thrown off its trajectory by the uneven face of the cliffside, well away from the trap set, landing instead right before Chunlan. So that's kinda how it's gonna go, he muttered aloud. Fine, that won't stop me. Almost better than his original plan, even. Knowing he could end the beast's life personally rather than through a trap gave him a sense of fulfillment, as though something had guided them to this fitting end. Boss reign is over, Raiju. Mataga never misses his target twice. A fire erupted from within him, with Mount Whitecrown watching over once more. Nothing stopped him and the beast from continuing the fight that had started 5 fateful years prior. Chunlan had his back pressed against some boulders that had fallen along the mountain path, while his opponent was backed by the sheet face of the summit. Let's finish this. Chunlan moved first. He had to press his advantage while his exhausted opponent was still slumped against the rocks. Drawing arrowheads and other small blades and metal bits from a jet bag, he sprinted to scatter them around the beast before it could recover enough energy. It seemed the king also hoped to end this quickly. Even as Chunlan tossed the metal, it took the chance to impulsively unleash a fierce lightning attack, a fatal mistake on its part. Got you. Countless blades stuck into the ground and flying through the air absorbed the electrical strike and exploded, throwing up a curtain of smoke, intermingled with sparks and flashes. Chunlan sprang through it all, drawing that much closer to Raiju. The beast convulsed as sparks scorched its fur, and discharged energy continually shocked its body. Never been pushed this far, have you? Telling it, why are you guys being so mean to the bear? I just think it's so funny that they're like trying to psychologically get in the bear's mind. Well, sorry, but I'm not done. Chunlan saw their surprise in Raiju's eyes. Even for a beast as powerful as it would falter upon sight of a human covered in smoke appearing, thrusting a rifle into its open mouth. Doesn't matter how thick your skin is from this distance. The rifle spat fire into the bear's mouth, and fresh blood, redder than even that of the flames from the shot, spurted from its mouth, staining Chunlan's pale skin and the bear's dark fur. Though perhaps due to the natural desire to struggle on, it drew breath. Chunlan noticed its eyes still moved to focus on him, and even its arm being raised. No! Chunlin drew back his rifle to escape, but with its jaw now free, Raiju retaliated with wild, unbelievable speed, sinking his teeth into his shoulder. How long had it been since a beast had managed this? First thought to flash through Chunlin's mind as intense waves of pain sank further into him. It was the only thing that could mildly stay the waves of pain that now persisted. With contact made and his sense keen from this terrible sensation, you could almost hear the bear's thoughts as if it growled audibly. "You will not escape me." "You're the one who won't escape me!" Its jaw was soaked in blood as it continued to ignore the bullet burning inside its body. Chunlin made no attempt to tear himself away. On the contrary, shifting only as much as possible while locked in its jaws to get a better grip, he began plunging his Nagasa into its neck, again and again with his free hand, electricity crackling through the length of the blade. Both crashed to the ground, their thirst for the blood of the other swirling in the air. Its teeth continued to bite. His blade continued to stab until neither could do any longer. After a few moments of pure silence, it was Chunlin who rose, his coat and skin soaked in so much mud and red that it could have been more his or his hunt's. He swayed as he attempted to steady his feet. He could hardly see through the blood dripping from his forehead, and the shoulder that had been endlessly punctured drooped, barely unable to move. But he was alive, and the battle was not yet over. Chunlin took up his rifle again as the embers of life, though faint, continued in the eyes of the King of Thunder. It glared at the one who dealt it its mortal blow, working desperately to lift its limbs as its heart still beat, blood burbling through its mouth and wounds with every sharpened breath. So long as it lived, it would never stop trying to stand. With an eerie stillness about the moment, Chunlin slid around into his weapon, before placing it between the beast's eyes. A final gunshot then wailed through the mountain, carrying with it the end to a legacy's life. And I really like the books in the Trails games. It's always interesting, like how much like different the tone is. Like the tone of the books is always like way more like, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it hardcore, but way more core, I guess, than like the regular tone. Which is not to say that I want the games to be like a, you know, dark and edgy or anything like that. Not that I can really consider this book dark and edgy, but it is kind of interesting how like the written stuff is always way, like, I guess that has a more realistic tone, is a better way to put it, right? And that's pretty true for like most of the books, right? I mean, especially like the Cold Steel ones. Like you have Red Moon Rose is pretty, you know, it has some more graphic descriptions, I believe, of like, you know, fighting and stuff like that. 3 and 9 obviously has some kind of dark stuff in it. This one, not really dark per se, but, you know, Chunlin actually getting injured here, and, you know, the descriptions of blood and stuff like that kind of makes the fighting feel more real and visceral. Same also with the kind of visual novel section with Chickadee. I mean, that's technically not a book, but, you know, it's written more in that style of letting themselves be a bit darker. When it came to, like, the descriptions of, you know, the smashed bodies and whatnot, which I forgot what I was gonna say. I don't know. But yeah, basically that's it. It's just kind of funny. Especially, like, 3 and 9 is probably the biggest contrast when it comes to, you know, I mean, talking about basically, like, I mean, technically they're themes that have been explored in the series before, right? In, like, the Sky games, and to a lesser extent, Zero. Because Zero does have the whole child ritual murder stuff going on, but it's a little glossed over. Like, they don't go into as much detail as some of the stuff they do in Sky. Mainly because, like, you don't really see it in, like, a first-person perspective. It's just Tio tells you about it. But yeah, basically that was just the point. It is always funny how the books are, like, way more graphic compared to, like, the actual main plot, where it's like, and then nobody got hurt at all. The day had come when one of the long-time threats disturbing the order of Mount Whitecrown was no more. Raiju, the false monarch none wished for, was finally felled by none other than a young man with whom it shared a cursed history. "Hey, you did it, Chunlin," piped Dao. "Nice work," followed Sayu. "That's our first objective cleared." Chunlin's bleeding out, by the way. The companions who helped him achieve this event, knowing what it meant to him, raised their voices in congratulations as they approached. Chunlin listened, confirming the beast was indeed dead, before collapsing and leaning back against its chest to catch his breath. A chill running through him as the tension of a life or death struggle released itself all at once. His bleeding was heavy, but it was dead. It really was dead. As he looked up at the sky, the clouds once conjured a divine and endless source of thunder cleared, revealing the sun at last. Yeah, Chunlin croaked. I feel like I can finally move on now, even if it wasn't just my win. Without you, I'd never have beaten it. Though this battle is a deeply personal one to help him overcome his past, he could never have pretended to believe the result would have been the same had he come along. It was not a fight with Chunlin, but Chunlin and the Woodland Wanderers. It was a distinct, valuable level of camaraderie that he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Let me scratch each other's backs, Sai responded, because without you, we'd have never been able to get the last shard of the artifact. Oh yeah, wait a second, I'll get it for you. Chunlin's body was heavy, but he lifted himself and turned towards the body, Nagasa in hand. He cut into the beast, forcing some thrust into his movements despite discomfort. Don't, like, we probably shouldn't make the guy whose shoulder just got eaten to shit, like, saw into the beast's thick hide. From the wounds accompanying it. The hide was thick and tough to puncture. Need some help there? I can handle it, Dao. You keep on the lookout for our next fight. Who's gonna bleed out, alright? Okay, maybe it's not that realistic. Maybe I was getting ahead of myself, because I feel like if you're getting, you know, chomped on by this super giant bear, even if it is still your shoulder, like, you probably need to be getting down the mountain quick, fast, and in a hurry. He wanted to do this for them, just as they had helped him take down Raiju, completing a goal that had gone neglected for years. He wanted his strength to contribute towards the completion of their goal. As they waited and watched with anticipation, he almost felt embarrassed getting so worked up at the thought of helping them. He was grateful the blood splatter on his face hit his flushed cheeks. Now continued on as Chunlin worked. Checking one big thing off your list. You finally got revenge for your old man. I don't think I call it revenge. I don't think my dad would have wanted me to treat it as something so simple either. Sounds like some Sai would say. But if it wasn't revenge, then what was it? I'm not sure. I guess you could say my next journey will be figuring that out. I guess. Chunlin felt himself taking one more step towards understanding what his father said as he pulled a piece of metal out from his corpse. But let's put that aside for your journey now. The metal, which had been lodged in Raiju's stomach and had caused unnatural organs to bloom around it, turned out to be the blade of a knife. Chunlin felt it was heavier than his own Nagasa, however, and its length and width reminded him more of the West Gladius. So, this was the part that transformed a normal bear into the King of Thunder, right? He asked. That's right, answered Sayu. It was on one of the scrolls in the shrine we were at before. There's no doubt about it. This is the last of the Thunderflash blade. So it's really part of a sword then. After wiping the blade clean of Raiju's innards, he handed it to Sayu. She slotted it into the cylinder of the frozen sky. The two pieces indeed fit as though made for one another. This is like a heavy-ass necklace at this point. She's got a dang flute hanging around her neck and a full-on sword? Gotta have hella back pain. I thought the cylinder was some kind of flute at first, but it was a hilt all along. That's right, this is the artifact we've been searching for. The Blade of the Thundering Skies. The two pieces became one. The blade emitted a dazzling flash of light in a cloud of fog. Once it cleared, what Sayu held in her hand was far from the rusted cylindrical trinket, and the blade covered in gore. It was now a clean golden weapon of esteemed power. A creature of such delicate beauty that all three of them could feel the wisdom of ages past distilled within its form. Now let's use it to blow away a guy. Just absolutely trash his ass. Still, we could have had control over better elements than lightning and water when we face Oni. You know much about the artifact and how it was used? The scroll didn't say, but at least we had a basic overview of what the artifact does. And now it's back at full power, right? Then does it do anything that could actually give us a leg up over him? Mere minutes apart, 2 goals have been completed. Lightning that had tormented Mount Whitecrown through Raiju had now continued in its true form as the Blade of the Thundering Skies. But there was no time to bask in the warmth of victories won, for they had one last foe to face before it was all done. One last foe, powerful enough to sap them with their building hope, or I guess building hope, kind. I mean, I feel like it should say budding hope, and shatter the bonds they had forged. Hey, turn her up, guys. Looks like we're already out of time, Dow warned. He climbs a lot faster than I thought. Yeah, I guess so, Chillin responded. We don't take him down, Sayu spoke. Mind focused and ready for what was to come, this fight will never end. There was a commotion down the mountain, one that even at a distance they could feel was laced with the intent to kill. Soon their eyes were fixed on the Oni. The strength of the murderous rage and willpower in the gaze he returned overshadowed anything the three of them could muster. We're getting there. We're getting there. Take a sip of the sauce. Alrighty. So it's looking like this is going to be longer than the Red Moon Rose videos. I think we're at what, like hour and 50 minutes? Hour and 55 minutes would be my guess. The danger that had long loomed over Mount Whitecrown, Raiju, had been summarily defeated, and the woodland wanderers retrieved the blade of the thundering skies. Yet still there was one final threat closing in on these young heroes, one devastating enough to destroy all the progress they struggled to make so far. There you are, completed artifact and all, the Oni growled eagerly. Save us some time, Raiju's gone, so all that's left for me to feast on is you. You climbed faster than I thought, Dao commented. Use one of your funny tricks again? Limited as Dao naturally sounded, Chillin agreed with the observation. No matter how strong the Oni was, it had only been a short time since he revived himself from beneath the sheet of ice. Chillin looked behind the man to see the entire terrain he passed had been extensively altered. The demon's stone crafting powers had been used to create stairs and other unnatural hitches and juts of earth to make it easier to conquer the treacherous terrain to the top. Guess you don't call yourself the stone melter for nothing. Of course, do you think mere walls and spears were all I could muster? Only flashed a wide grin that showed a numerous amount of teeth. Hope you'll enjoy being my prey, even you, Matage. Your defeat of Raiju has captured my attention. It'll make for a suitable morsel. Stop talking like we're slabs of meat, Chillin snapped. He understood well what the Oni wanted out of them, and it was far from profound. He had used a stone melody and fought his way to the summit, not just to steal the artifact, but to feed his lust for slaughter. But Chillin had no idea what awakened this desire. He could see that all living beings, regardless of their worth, were his prey. We have no intention of being your morsel, spat Sayu, and we have nothing to do with whatever grudge or obsession you have against our people. We came here to fulfill a goal we were given, and that's all. No amount of intimidation would set her on another path. Not once did Sayu waver as she glared straight into the eyes of the monster who had threatened the woodland wanderers for so long. Now with the blade of the thundering skies in hand, she was filled with more than just determination. He was filled with a piercing, almost overwhelming willpower. He only laughed darkly at the display of bravado. You think he won because of that? How pathetic. Think it all you like. That artifact will soon be in my master's hands. I have more than just this. I have more confidence, more knowledge, and a new friend. As she said this, Sayu leveled her crossbow with the blade of the thundering sky slotted into it. How big is this crossbow? This time, I'm going to beat you. In Sayu, Chun-Li saw the strength that he had lost and was slowly regaining. He agreed with all those things, for he too had more confidence, knowledge, and friends to lift him up now. They had risked their lives as a team to conquer that which seemed impossible. And though he did not come out of the battle unscathed, the bonds he gained in the name of his victory would not go unremembered. Not wanting to let his companions down, Chun-Li drew on what was left of this exhausted energy, pointed his rifle towards the Oni. It seemed to amuse the man greatly. Chun-Li and Matage, who brought down Raiju, will gladly feast upon you. I hope you'll entertain me in place of the prey that you had the audacity to take. Hey, better count me in too, Dao shouted. He was the first to throw himself at the Oni, leaping into the air and kicking off a nearby wall to launch himself forward. As Dao ready for an explosive mid-air spinning kick at the back of the target's neck, Chun-Li and Sayu readied themselves to fire their weapons at any given moment. Surprise of none present, Dao's foot met with a shield of rock. Playing the same hand twice won't work against me, you imbecile. It's not a hand, it's a foot, so who's the real imbecile there, huh? The Oni grunted in surprise as Dao kicked off the shield with ease. In that same instant, a bolt wrapped in fog flew towards the Oni's side. Only just being blocked in the split second, he shifted a makeshift shield from his right hand to his left. The bolt was not alone. It had come accompanied by a bullet fired from Chunlan, creating a deep crack in the stony foundation. Sorry, just a diversion again, Dao mocked. It's the same trick can work twice against you. Must be your brains made of rocks too. And the stone melter, your childish taunts mean nothing to me. So, knock him on his ass, Dao cried. Another bolt punctured the shield an instant later, erupting like a bolt of lightning with a loud clap and flash of light. The shock shattered the initial crack, and a hot wind from the explosive aftermath singed the hairs on the Oni's flesh. Sayu seemed very pleased with these results. All my first shot with the artifact a success. Might have an easier time figuring this out than I thought. The attack was a perfect display of the absolute power she now wielded in her small hands. She still wrapped her bolts in fog born from the surrounding moisture in the air, but this fog now acted as a conductor of sorts, giving rise to long-range, precise lightning strikes. This was also one other thing she'd only just noticed after the lightning subsided. I admit you have yourself a dangerous weapon there. Quite a power that Raiju had hidden within himself. I don't think that's all the Blade of the Thundering Skies has got to it, Sayu retorted. It can control water and lightning to do what it did just now, but I think its original purpose was to... The words were cut off as the Oni threw himself towards her. He can be the first to die. He formed a rock wall behind himself to hurl his great body in the direction of the two who burned him with their ranged attacks. Watch out, Sayu, Chunlan tried to block the incoming stone spear flung at him. The impact was enough to fragment the Nagase he had hunted with for so many years to his hilt. You think you could block me with a pathetic knife? Fool. There's still plenty of ways to stop you with it. Chunlan dived to catch one of the shards from his beloved blade, or throwing it at the Oni's face. It may have been damaged, but bro, how is he throwing? His shoulder is shot to shit. I mean, I guess maybe it's his other, like maybe his non-dominant shoulder got fucked up. I'm just saying. So if he stabbed, so he probably got bit in the left shoulder. I don't know if they specified, because he would have been stabbing with his other arm, presuming he's right-handed, just statistically speaking. I guess it'd be okay. Impotent brat, the enraged man roared from pain, shocked at his superior craftsmanship. Alright, he's open. Chunlan and Sayu jumped to give themselves some space from the Oni before opening fire on him for another round. At the same time, Dao lashed out with a fresh kick from behind, followed by what has to be a vigorous punch to the tattooed back if the Oni hadn't stopped at first. No, Dao, screamed Sayu. Stone spear had sliced open Dao's side, one especially jagged and being formed in the Oni's haste to defend himself. Nimble Dao sunk to his knees after falling into the trap, blood dripping heavily from the wound. Though the spear's point had missed anything vital, any kind of wound that slowed one down before such a ruthless man was a fatal one. Damn, there's gotta be a way to save Sayu at least. Dao forced a burst of his depleted strength to roll out of the way of the Oni's accompanying attacks. Chunlan fired shot after shot to try and pin their opponent down. Just as the young man came face to face with their impending defeat, Sayu piped up with a strange question. Hey Chunlan, is there a one-way tunnel or well of some kind around here? Like a really deep one? Chunlan was taken aback, but he also trusted there was a purpose behind it. The Oni's full attention on Dao, the two quickly exchanged words. Yeah, one's a ways down. It's a cave about 10 arc deep, but there's only one way to get in or out. What do you have in mind? So that's a gamble. Well, how things look right now, I got no problem betting all my chips on you. That's how you smiled. Thanks. I'll think as long as I have a closed off space, I can unleash the Blade of the Thundering Sky's full power. Chunlan instantly understood what that power was. A traveling priest had taught him and demonstrated as much to him through a series of natural science lessons. Alright, you guys need to head straight down to the trail you chased Raiju up. You should find the cave there before long. What about you, Chunlan? I need some time to prep, right? I know this mountain like the back of my hand. I'll keep him busy. This was in the Mitage's mind the best way to repay his debt, and to show that he had full trust in the Woodland Wanderer. Isn't Dao getting murdered right now? What about that part of the plan? Let's take another sip. I am liking this a lot, though. I don't know if I quite like it as much as 3 and 9, but I would definitely say it's probably my second favorite so far of the books. I think 3 and 9 had that little extra like, interesting aspect of the... Well, it's kind of retroactively more interesting just because Swin and Nadia got to be, like, real important characters. And also, I forgot what I was going to say. Like, the slow reveal about, like, the garden and stuff is interesting, combined with just, I really like the especially the chapter from Swin's perspective on, like how he deals with his trauma of being, like, forced to kill is really good. And, like, all the guilt that he feels over it. The rage of a beast. There was no reason to hesitate. Having been freed from his own fate, Chunlin could now dedicate every last bit of his remaining strength to helping his companions. He fired off several more rounds, and Dao, either knowing Chunlin's intent or inspired to act through Sayu's cry, rushed to his feet and darted through an opening in the Oni's defenses. Always so quick to flee, Mouse, the Oni spat. I'm your opponent now, Chunlin demanded. You know, the one who stole Raiju's kill from you? The Oni turned towards the call and gunshots aimed at his back, watching Dao flee from the corner of his eye before presenting a bloodthirsty smile to his opponent. You think you can fight against me alone? Damn right I can. It's my duty to protect this mountain, so you gotta get through me first. A dark laugh was elicited from the man. I've always appreciated those who don't know their own limits. Come, let me have a taste of the power that took down the King of Thunder. The Oni had completely fallen for Chunlin's provocation. Something didn't feel right about it. A shadow of doubt crossed Chunlin's heart as he wondered just how this man, of all men, could fall for such a simple ploy. Man kills woodland wanderers to make himself stronger, he thought to himself. He really just after their artifacts? Is it just about the hunt? Chunlin ran, bidding the Oni to follow. As he did, he pondered on his questions further, creating yet more questions about the strange enemy they faced. On the surface, he hunted for artifacts on behalf of some unknown clan. This later turned into an excuse to hunt the woodland wanderers and kill them for his own personal gain. What is his true purpose now, then? Was it orders or lust for blood? Whichever one it is, I still can't let him off the hook. Chunlin shook the question off with a final thought of the matter. He had to defeat the Oni, purpose known or unknown. And he felt a twinge of pain towards a human who somehow lost his sanity to war-hungry impulses. Guiding the enemy with carefully aimed shots, Chunlin brought himself to a stretch of mountain barren of outcroppings. Trees, its flat terrain creating a thick, undisturbed blanket over the ground. Its slant made it an ideal place for sledding, but it had long been left untouched by humans. Here I thought you'd lead me on a merry chase, snarled the Oni. You underestimate me? Because I may well have overestimated you. Sure about that? In the same instant, Chunlin's rifle fired as he whirled around to avoid the Oni's first fist striking the ground. The bullet that flew through the air was reduced to a harmless spark by a rock wall, or would have been, had all gone to plan. Possible, my wall, why? The wall formed by the Oni was too low to cover his body, and the bullet instead grazed off the very top of the wall and pierced the target's shoulder. How did it stop? What did you do? Nothing. Take a look around. The current battlefield was a sea of snow, a place where the rocks so desperately needed for the Oni's defense were buried deep enough to be difficult to retrieve on the fly. The man's face twisted with enough disgust at the revelation that it seemed to change the script of the arcane writings tattooed over him. I can ask you again, what are you? Despite revealing just how he bested him in his current environment, Chunlin felt he was in no position to take further advantage of it. You're hungry for more power when you don't even have a full grasp of the power you already have. Murder woodland wanderers. I know you're not all there, but even then I'm having a hard time understanding you. The more he spoke, the more his anger felt a pity. He knew the emptiness of having lost one's purpose in life as much as he knew the joy of finding value and purpose again. Man's purpose, simple in declaration, yet far more complex than claimed, had at some point become distorted. Somewhere along the way, your reason for fighting, your reason for living, somehow got jumbled together. Realizing this, Chunlin felt if he prodded further, he might just see into the man's heart. He noticed the color drained from the Oni's skin, a kind of apprehension that came when oneself was being exposed. But your power was gifted to you, right? Would that inspire you or give you purpose? Or were you just told what your purpose was? Shut up! All of the Oni's tattoos began to flash a reddish-black glow, while giving off a heat strong enough to burn his very flesh. Chunlin never seen anything like it. He felt dwarfed in the shadow of the sinister glow before him. Bullseye, huh? Don't you taunt me. What could you possibly understand about me, the Oni spat? Should have died when they took my home, but here I am. So who could condemn me for wanting power, for wanting to feed this hunger? The woodland wanderers took your home? Doesn't sound like them at all. Or was that something someone told you? Chunlin had no interest in his opponent's life story, based. Sorrowful as it seemed to be, the Oni, his driving forces being laid bare, in turn spoke to a low but powerful snarl as the madness of his movements grew more frantic. Kill, hunt, love to devour the woodland wanderers. You should understand this hunger, fellow hunter. Why, I would want to make a meal out of you. This isn't some hunt. I could never accept what you're doing as hunting. They fought on, evenly matched in offense and defense. Despite having been robbed of his advantage and reason, he only showed no signs of slowing his frenzy. He could not throw makeshift spears in an instant, so he raised what he could of a shield as he rushed the Matage. Chunlin fell back, step by step, all the while firing at the wall, barreling towards him. Chunlin was struck by the hollowness of the Oni's existence as they continued. It appeared his hunger was only a terrible greed that would never be satisfied. The Matage hunts to live, to accomplish our goals, to face life. Don't lump our traditions with your meaningless slaughtering. What have I been fighting for? You saying I really killed and killed for nothing, Matage? Chunlin knew he could never lose to such a man. How could someone fighting to discover his own goals, someone fighting to protect others, someone now fighting to inherit all of his people had given, ever lose against one who destroyed to fill an impossible void? Leaning his weight under the rock wall built up, the Oni rushed headlong down the slope. It was as though he wanted to use all of his destructive self and all the pressure building within to crush Chunlin whole. How should I know if you don't know? But what I do know is you not knowing the answer will spell your loss in this mountain. Chunlin felt none of this pressure, however, for it all rang as hollow as the Oni's self in his eyes. He was full from reason for being and forged bonds, and he could draw from those strengths however he needed to conquer his foe. Oni lashed out with a hard, heavy stone pole, but the attack did nothing but send the air in snow dancing. Missed. Where are you? Right in front of your face. Chunlin was gliding over the snow on a wooden plank, a piece of cabin that once stood on a remote slope. In his rage, the Oni cared not if his own sight was blocked by his rock wall, and he continued charging forward wildly, completely missing that Chunlin was preparing his getaway. He's got big Legolas sliding on his shield, shooting bows at orcs energy. It's just fucking see ya, nerd. No matter, stuttered the Oni. Snow around here is more shallow. The advantage is mine again. Instead, seeing the ground starting to poke through the snow in pockets gave the Oni the confidence to boast. He could take down this brat who managed to see through the bravado that sustained him, then all would do well again. Little did he know, Chunlin had a good reason for leading the Oni to an area where his advantage would be lost. Cave. As they came inside of the cave, Chunlin, ready to place his faith in the next step from his companions, threw aside the board and pushed the last of his energy into his legs. But Chunlin immediately felt something off in the place that should have brought him hope. White haze. Is she not ready? He had not expected the cave to be obscured by white fog. He turned back to his foe, and perhaps noticing Chunlin's confusion, simply basking in favorable terrain, the Oni shivered with delight. His tattoos began to pulse with light, shining so brightly even the gleam in his eyes was lost from view. The stone melter crumbles. Spoilers, you're telling me that Chunlin wins? What? I would have probably named it something a little less direct, personally. Sayo, I see Chunlin with the Oni. Looks like this is it. This would be the place where the woodland wanderers and Matage would end their fight against the man who terrorized them. Keeping watch outside the dead-end cave they holed up in, Dao could see their companion and sworn enemy approaching at a rapid pace. It was difficult for him to report to Sayu, though he stopped bleeding. The wounds in his side were still painful enough to render him immobile. I thought he stopped bleeding. Just gonna be honest, I feel a little doubt. You're running around and shit. It hasn't been all that long. You even have any bandages or anything to bind it with? I don't buy it. No, you're still bleeding. Still, Dao felt pain. Such pain was nothing compared to the opportunity to finally sever the chains of torment and nightmares this man had inflicted upon his people. Sorry, Dao. I underestimated how tough this would be. Sayu's response was uncharacteristically bitter. He was examining the bolts she had pierced into the wall of the cave, pulling some out when unsatisfied with their placement and adding them elsewhere. As she hopped here and there through the mist while clutching the blade of the thundering skies, there was a quiet determination in her eyes, and despite the frigid weather, cold sweat dripped down her face from nerves. What's wrong? I've never heard you doubt yourself like this, but you got trouble. It's my job to share the burden with you. From where Dao stood above the cave, he couldn't see her expression, nor did he exactly know what she was attempting to do from the inside. Yet he knew her voice well, as much as he believed unwaveringly that against all her anxiety, whatever the problem, they would overcome as a team. It's the artifact. It's taken longer than I thought to figure out, responded Sayu. I think being half inside Raiju changed it somehow, like it's been augmented to better suit its lightning attacks. I can barely understand a word of that, but if you're struggling with it, it's not a complete loss, is it? Like your estimation on what it does isn't that far off? It's not. So long as I have enough time, I should be able to make this work. Sayu pushed herself to move faster as she used the bolts in the artifact to adjust the amount of mist and electricity in the cave. She could not afford to slow her hands, slick with condensation now as they were, as even just a hair more impatience would risk harming her accuracy. I'll come here with Chunlin to buy you some more time then, Dao said. Then we'll jam down into this hole here as soon as you're good to go. Leaping from the top of the cave, he waved and ready to take off towards Chunlin, who was already well within range to hear him call out. Dao, not with that wound, Sayu cried. The bleeding stopped. I can handle another fight. Do whatever it takes to help you fulfill your goals, Sayu. It's what I live for. Dao made a playful slapping of his bicep. I was aware of how much control one required of their muscles to master Shin, but she knew he was only trying to reassure her. The only reason she could still run now was due to him flexing his core to reduce bleeding and prevent the wound from widening. They had no time to dress it with herbs or bandages. You know what? Alright, I'll buy it. He's got super muscles, sure. At least they kind of addressed it. Like, directly. Let's have Chunlin with me. Your plan will work, so no more doubting. Just do what you gotta do to see this through. Chunlin and the Oni had noticed Dao by this point, causing him to accelerate the burden on his body to enter the fray sooner. No matter how Sayu protested, he was going to fight. Darn it, Dao, wish your body could keep all the crap he put it through. He was right, of course. Though she grumbled with worry and irritation, she had to trust her own thinking and focus on her end of the plan. Her cousin had always been there to protect her. He knew well she could leave her safety to him. Sure you're okay to move around? Chunlin shouted at Dao, apparent arm in his voice. Right back at you, but whether we're good or not, we gotta keep throwing down. Chunlin understood that to mean Sayu still needed more time, and that Dao's arrival was proof enough. After glancing over to the fog-filled cave, the Mataki knew what he needed to do. Little mouse, the Oni said flatly, eyes now devoid of any emotion. Good, I'll kill you too. I'll crush everything. Everything! His tattoos reflected his bloodlust and rage through a reddish-black shade as they pulsed from his skin. Well, aren't we looking extra demonic? Dao quipped. Dao quipped. That's gonna be the video. You think I'm gonna read the whole book? Nah, just Dao quipped. That's the only thing you need to know about Moonless Morn. Or Moonless Morn. About time you started embracing the name we gave you. He's completely lost it, Chunlin said. Don't tell him what he's gonna do, so watch yourself. Can this be no fall for traps even easier? I sure hope so. As he only formed a massive stone blade over his arm, neither could tell if the roar elicited came from his voice or if the burst of color from his tattoos produced an audible shudder from the very air. Sure hope he doesn't, like, collapse the cave or nothing. That's what I'd do. That'd be my play. I'd be like, hey, that cave looks kind of sus. Presumably he can probably do that. The blade was a third of his arm and perforated the skin, its jagged, uneven surface seeming to shriek with the wind upon every wild swing. An instant after the two young men threw themselves to the side to avoid being struck, a large tree behind them seemed to explode as though it were hit by lightning. Dao couldn't believe his eyes. What is this? Has he been behind this kind of power the whole time? I'd wager he didn't use it because of the strain it puts on his body, but I don't think we can afford to just sit here and wait for him to self-destruct. The Oni was being driven by bloodlust and only bloodlust by this point. Though the light had faded from his eyes, his body was being pushed to new, limitless heights by the madness burning within. Chunlin could feel it was the kind of rage that would not stop until everything around him beyond was reduced to ash. Even if we could, I don't got that kind of patience. Let's just beat the hell out of him, Chunlin, right here, right now. Way ahead of you. As if to signal the start of the official battle, Chunlin fired off a shot at the flesh where the Oni's right hand melded into the weapon. A useless act, as it had been blocked by a stone wall now formed around his left hand. I guess we still have to deal with those damn shields. Still, on point with the most annoying things, even when he's lost his marbles. Well, if we can sneak in little hits, we'll have to use big swings against him. On it! It appeared the stone merging into his flesh was beginning to restrict the Oni's breathing, but through blade-soaked swings, he continued to fight with his blade. Get down! His next strike was horizontal. Both felt their hair being tugged by the chaotic winds at the edge, passed over their heads. Dao then took this moment as a chance to counter. Stomach's wide open, time for some payback! No, Dao, not yet! Dao persisted before Chunlin's shout could stop him. He transformed all his pain into anger, unleashing it all into a single attack at the foe's exposed torso. And another! First blow was immediately followed by a roundhouse kick at the Oni's leg, however. The one sent flying this time was not the demon, but Dao. Even after throwing all his weight into the sweep, the Oni still had more than enough power to launch small but tremendous counterattacks with his left hand. Come on! Dao sputtered between coughs after landing. Tell me he's just as fast on his feet when he's out of control? He can still block bullets. Of course he can counter a kick, Chunlin spat with exasperation. I said use his big swings against him and we control where he goes. Look! The ground at the Oni's feet appeared as though a deep footprint shape had been dug out of it. He was swinging massive amounts of rock much heavier than himself with an unfathomable, unmanageable power. And with each swing, he was naturally spun round by its momentum. The enemy followed with the third attack. Chunlin jumped in the opposite direction of Dao and towards a cave where Sayu was waiting. Fog was getting progressively thinner. I've brought a good amount of time so far. It can't be much longer. That's right. It doesn't matter how we get him there. This ends the same way. Dao bounded before the Oni to feign a foolish frontal attack. Good of you to line up for the slaughter, howled the Oni, as he lashed his blade downward, cutting nothing as Dao dropped the feint and jumped nimbly away. I can't believe you fall for something so obvious. Hate your guts, but I'm gonna start feeling bad. This keeps up. Don't get cocky. If you eat one of those, you're done, so no messing around. Chunlin's warning was followed by several shots to seal the Oni's movements. The Oni aimed a counter towards Chunlin, but he had calculated the time between the attacks and dodged with ease. Batake and Woodland Wanderer continued their pattern of baiting, attacking, and dodging, counters, baiting, attacking, and dodging, counters again with each heavy swing, bringing their target closer to the cave. They repeated it until they heard a clear bass sound that signaled to them that Sayu had exited the cave and the end of the battle was near. Sayu's finally charged the spirit bomb! That's the conch. Sayu's ready. Chunlin noticed that the fog had completely cleared from the cave. Come on, Stone Melter, into the grave you go. Standing prominently with arms spread at the mouth of the cave, he taunted one last time out of the demon. One last attack out of the demon. Instead of swinging again, the Oni let the blade crumble and leap for his prey using the rocky shield on his left arm instead. One last push, huh? Chunlin muttered under his breath, and he did not flinch in the face of this direct assault. At that moment, words from Sayu through the vagabond flashed across his mind. Hit the unexpected with the unexpected. But Chunlin did just that. Rather than counter the Oni's barreling strike, Chunlin stood still, took a deep breath, and rolled backward into the cave. Dao! Got it! Dao dove in behind them, and after grabbing Chunlin's arm as he lay entangled in the Oni's grip on the ground, unleashed Shin. See ya, Rock for Brains! It's the end of the line for you! The Oni doubled over and fell, releasing his grip just as Dao used the momentum of the attack to pull himself and Chunlin safely back out of the cave. The rampage ends here. Still sailing through the air with Dao, Chunlin aimed one last shot into the cave and fired. It seemed to course through the air with the will of the man who fired it, flying unerringly within the cave towards the Oni's head, a brisk whistle following its path. The Oni raised his stone shield to block it, and right then, sparks engulfed in a flash of light as bright as the sun. That lone shot would become a fireball that consumed all that dwelled within the cave, taking the Oni along with it. Throw it long. We still have a little bit of sauce left to sip on. But the sauce reserves are dangerously low. Oh, let's reposition. Do a little reading stretch break. Chapter 16. Clinging to what is precious. Another cursed fate had been severed. After the flames erupted and the explosion continued unceasingly, brittle racks brittle racks of the cave collapsed, forever sealing the demon within. Yow! Dao reacted with surprise, coupled with pain as his back was slammed against the snowy ground. I mean, hopefully Sayu got out of the cave. Looking up at the cave, he was met with even greater surprise. He knew their plan would be enough to bring down the inside of the cave, but its outer shell was crumbled as well, carving a new base into the landscape. Balance lost, the loose, unnaturally broken stone started sliding away, taking much of the slope with it. Was it meant to do all that? This fallen cave-in must have been the Oni, Chunlin replied. He couldn't block an explosion from every direction with his power, so he probably messed with as many of the rocks inside as he could before his death. So his habit of pulling out rocks from his surroundings to make shields just made things worse for him in the end. Makes sense, but no way did he cause that huge explosion. Was that the blade of the thundering skies? I don't know, but I'm sure she could tell you. At some point they had been rejoined by Sayu, who stood by to observe what had just transpired. Unlike her companions, there was no hint of surprise on her face. That was a hydrogen explosion. The logic is simple. The true purpose behind the artifact is to collect and deconstruct water molecules. So they set off a damn nuke in the cave. Oh no. I just gathered them up in a cave and had Chunlin ignite it. Sayu, Tao cried with joy. Alright, are you hurt at all? I have no idea what you just said, but as long as you're okay, I'm okay. I do like, she's like, the logic is simple. Yeah, I guess. In one ear and out the other. What about you, Tao? Are you okay, even after using Shin again? Tao reacted with a grimace as though the question reminded him he was still indeed severely injured. All around him, the snow was dyed a deep red. Tao, damn, guess the wound opened up, he grunted. Can't believe I'm screwed up this bad. It's okay, I think. Nobody's ever really gone. The wound's only opened up a little bit, but that doesn't mean you're good to move around just yet. Lay back for me. Yeah, sorry, but thanks. I procured some herbs and bandages from her pouch. Chunlin wanted to help, but as he tried to sit up, he was overcome with a wave of exhaustion and numbness in his legs. He fell right back down. Not you too, Chunlin. Fine, he reassured Sayu. I think all the adrenaline from fighting is just finally catching up to me. I'm nowhere near as bad off as Dao, said the guy who got chomped on by the super bear for like a minute. After inspecting Chunlin's wounds, Sayu seemed to believe he was telling the truth. She quickly returned to patching up Dao. Still, her worries were getting the better of her, and she would glance in his direction every now and again between her work. I really am fine. Just let me rest for a bit, he said. That's called so much blood loss you're gonna pass out and die, Chunlin. He said, voice weak with an overwhelming drowsiness. You don't need medicine to perk me up then. I'll just sleep for a bit. It's not like I'll die or... Chunlin trailed off. As his vision dimmed, he could have sworn he could see two people he recognized behind Sayu as the sunlight peeked from over her shoulder. The snow beneath him, cold as it was meant to be, felt more akin to a warm bed as he drifted off to sleep. A few hours later, Chunlin was awake and leaning with Sayu in the shade of a tree as they watched the sun continue to rise. Though they weren't looking at one another as they spoke, gazing in the same sky and peace gave them a deeper sense of connection than doing so ever would. Wish I could learn what the Oni's deal was, Sayu mused. Still have a whole lot of questions. Wish I could tell you, Chunlin responded. But I will say that towards the end, I did feel kind of sorry for him. Felt like something was pushing him to a point where there was no turning back even if he wanted to. You thought so too? I suppose it's all a moot point now. He attacked, we defended ourselves, that was all. True, that's pretty true. Val slept soundly near a pile of straw. Two managed to put together. According to Sayu, the worst was over and he would recover. At the same time, they both looked over to the collapsed cave along the slope. There was no sign of movement. The old White Crown had its natural silence return to it at last. I mean, I do, you know, them trying to give the villain more depth is whatever. You know, you don't really have all that much time to give him too much depth anyway, but going at it from the angle of like understanding and not forgiveness is better for me. Like, I like it when the protagonist and the antagonist reach some level of like mutual understanding, but the antagonist still has to like have permanent consequences for whatever their actions are. Right? Like Chunlin having some sort of understanding of the Oni, but the Oni still has to like, you know, get hit by a hydrogen bomb. I like. think I finally get why you can walk your path without hesitation, Chunlin said. Do you? In a way that'll help you on your own path? Yeah, I think it will. Chunlin had dreamed briefly that he was reunited with his father. They exchanged no words, but the dream was a simple one. Unclouded by indiscernible emotions, his father told him he was proud of him, and that he could now move on to find his next goal in life. And after ruffling his son's hair, much as he did so often while still living, he disappeared. You said they exchanged no words, then you say, hey, he said some stuff? I guess exchange means that Chunlin didn't say anything, so I guess it still makes sense. It was enough to remind Chunlin why he was always so bound by everything his father told him. I always wanted my life to have meaning, Chunlin continued. I wanted meaning to feel like a Matage. Meaning to know I was really facing life, as my dad put it. Not knowing how to find it left me at a standstill. After meeting you and just giving everything into seeing your goal completed, I think I better get what he meant. Meaning isn't something to search for or to justify in this moment. Something you can find when you look back at what's been done. If I can think back on the life I've faced and see that it means something to me, then I've already fulfilled our beliefs as Matage. Though weaved into another's path, found something new and wonderful about himself that he would never have found otherwise. Guess it makes us opposites. Sayu let out a small chuckle, followed by the brightest, whitest smile Chunlin had ever seen from her yet. Having lowered his gaze from the environment surrounding them to meet hers, Chunlin was left to wonder how such an unrefined smile could feel so serene at the same time. So clear were her eyes then that he could even see himself in them, faced with a similarly brilliant, warm expression that he could not recognize. Feeling suddenly sheepish from watching her for too long, he turned away. Opposites? Well, for me, I feel like meaning comes first. Before I do anything, I make sure there's meaning behind the decisions I'm making. Wow, then we really are just as opposite as you can get. Since Sayu had faith that her every action would be worth something, she never had to look back and wonder if what she had done was worthwhile. Helen, however, thought it was better to look back on what was done and glean a new, more solid foundation from the path already forged. No, I think Sayu's better, personally. I think you should always have a reason for doing something before you do it. But I do think the idea of trying to find meaning behind your actions retroactively is interesting. Or trying to, like, grow from them and glean new insights is not necessarily wrong. Always be stuck in the past, I guess, he whispered. I don't think that's true. Sayu pointed his attention to the blade of the thundering skies. I think you're a little more like me than you think. Never could have won this fight without you. In fact, I'd say we won our battles because you trusted that your help would turn the tides in our favor. And maybe I'm just more like you than I think too. Our paths and goals just happened to cross, Sayu continued. Here we are now, looking back at having gotten something out of this coincidental experience. Meaning. Both sides brought something of themselves to the day, working to cover for each other's weaknesses in order to overcome a series of great trials as a team. Despite their short time together, they knew that what they managed to achieve was no small accomplishment. Sounds to me like you're able to find out what you're looking for. Kind of. Chunlin did have an answer, but he felt it was one among many possible answers yet to be discovered. For now, at least, it was enough to give him a direction to start walking. Not sure if I'll be able to stick to the path I've found the way you guys have. I think it'll be fine. Remind me of the Matage who showed me mine, and also of how I was when I first met him. Helen still did not know who that vagabond was who showed Sayu her way all those years ago. He was grateful for the great change he brought in her. In that sense, Chunlin could very much see how much he was like the little lost girl the Matage had guided. What he was looking for in his travels, Chunlin pondered, where he was going. He thought about the past 2 days some more, and he was left with the sense that he had closed a journey he never thought to trek. He met new people he could trust, unbound himself from a broken past, and found courage that would see him to a mended future in such an unimaginably short amount of time. He was also very proud of it. What a sweet feeling it was to realize his life was worth living. Might be a gamble on my part, but maybe it'd be a good idea to take up new trails, continue searching for an even bigger path to walk. You guys. And so, Chunlin decided he would take his first steps towards the future. There was no firm road to guide him, but he trusted with most certainty the beaten path walked would look incredible when he turned back around to admire it. Come on, Chunlin, be a playable character. You've already got like more characterization than most characters, if I'm being honest. And I mean that more as a compliment than a flame. Alright, I do need to pause for like a quick second before we do the final chapter. So, be right back. Alrighty, we're back. Let's bring it to a close. It's definitely the longest book now. I think we're at like already an hour, like 2 hours and 40 minutes. At least. Final. Matage. A month passed. March heralded the beginning of spring. For most, this would mean flowers and sunshine. For Mount White Crown, however, snow was still falling and falling, piling into heavy blankets along the ground. Those who lived in the mountain knew her mannerisms well, and they felt in their bones that this particular spring had come on much quicker and was far milder than in previous years. Still, there were fewer blizzards to chase travelers off its winding trails, and green bamboo shoots could be seen poking their heads out of the thinner patches of white. The elderly residents of the Matage's village remarked that this was the true spring of Mount White Crown they remembered from their youth. Chunlin thrust a sturdy stick through a bag of his belongings and stepped out the door of his home. Bro, he's got this straight up. Like he's going on the railroad. Bag of belongings on a stick. He walked down a path leading to the village, thinking along the way of how that path, small as it was, came with so many meaningful discoveries. Last year had been full of such little things, and if he could find them through a hunting path like this one, he was certain to discover an unfathomable wealth on the new, far longer trail ahead of him. Even on schedule, you're a punctual lad, Chunlin. As Chunlin passed the village before the sun had even risen, as though he were waiting for him, he heard the voice of the chief calling out to his back. Chunlin had intentionally gotten his farewells out of the way the night before, so he could leave in the morning when everyone was still in bed. He should be asleep. The goodbyes were what yesterday was for, Chief. Think an old man like me can't rise and shine so early in the morning, Chief harumphed. Been many a long adventurous night out camping for wild game, you know. I can get up early for something this important. I know this isn't quite what you were hoping for, but I think I'll be a better man for it, so thank you for that, really. Chunlin was long overdue to say this to the man, for it had been too long since he expressed his gratitude. The times he expressed it were too few on the whole. Even as he said it, he was relieved that it was still too dark for the flushed expression on his face to be visible. He always felt the elders saw him as a burden. He was the last of this generation of the village, a pedigree youth trained by his father, the previous chief, who had himself been trained by a Matage of legend. What a waste of potential he was for his lack of confidence or direction in life. Surely they begrudged him being their final option as the next to carry on their will, and would be glad to see him gone. When he announced his desire to leave, all of them, led by the chief, worked their hardest to convince him to do otherwise out of genuine want for his presence. It wasn't until he explained his motives that they agreed the journey would be an excellent character-building exercise for the future. For their future, Chief. And welcomed the idea with warmth. It's often said that children are unaware of just how precious they are to their parents, and Chunlin now imagined this to be the case with him in the village. Hope for? Found your prize of Matage. That's more than I could have hoped for. Father and Master Kuhn would be very proud. I'd like to think that. Thank you, Chief. I promise I'll find a way of giving back to this place after everything it's given me. Chunlin felt the village needed to battle in the winds of change. He was nowhere near ready to lead as the next chief, but he could continue cultivating meaning in life worthy of that high station. He was confident he could be part of ushering in a new age for his people. Last month, I was able to put something behind me after years of stagnation, he told the chief. I acted as a Matage to save others and upheld our ways to eliminate that which threatened it. I want to find more of what changed me then and the rest of the world. You were less stagnant than you realize. You haven't changed all much in my eyes, even. You think so? Chunlin was caught off guard by this. He was certain he would be told how much he'd changed in so short a time. To him, his horizons had expanded far beyond anything he had known before, transforming him into someone unrecognizable from the man he was. You've never been able to just ignore someone in need. All you did last month was just that. So it's perfectly in line with how you always been. It was true. It was this very instinctual habit that had been in the catalyst for him to meet the young girl and start this whole adventure. There was, in fact, a connection between his impulse to help others and his constant struggle to find meaning in his meager existence. And perhaps he really had changed very little. I almost forgot to say, Chief began, a noticeably lighter shift in his voice now present to account for Chunlin's downcast gaze. Serving Raiju's body's almost finished. Sure you don't want it? It was yours. You're in your father's goal for so long. You have a right to claim it. That. True to tradition, once it was confirmed the Oni was no longer a threat, Tage had retrieved the corpse of Raiju and stuffed it. It was a method of displaying that the danger had passed and the mountain had continued being protected from impurities by human hands. It was also a great symbol of pride, as the Matage were always quick and sure to assign the glory of an arduous kill. Sure it's alright to leave in the village square? It's fine, there's no place for it in my house, and besides, I've hunted it to cut ties with it in my past. And the rest of us be sure to take good care of it. It will make for a wonderful reminder of how you protected us for generations to come. Chunlin gave a small nod of approval. If his old regret could be transformed in such a way, then he regretted it. And he welcomed it. Well then, I'm off. Now, with no such heaviness to weigh him down, his greatest worry was how much meaning he could absorb in the great wide world to make his own. Would he find anything at all? Would he meet his newfound companions who changed so much of him again? Would they see how much he had grown after what he had come to learn? Casting these bubbling thoughts of anxiety aside, Chunlin turned away and departed. Even if many an obstacle or trial arose from his new path, he knew he possessed the means to overcome them. After all, he was a Matage. He could face whatever life had thrown at him. Take care, Chunlin. We're waiting for your return, Chief said to him, standing and watching till he could see the young man's back no more. Once he was out of view, he turned his gaze to the relic beside him of Kyun Ulcus, pulled out a gourd of sake from his robe, and sprinkled some of it over the monument before resting his back against it. I don't know if you remember his face, Kyun, but the son of your disciple just left saying the same things you did. I was right. He's not dead. The smile on the chief's face was different from the one of support he had shown Chunlin. Not a youthful grin, but closer to the nostalgic grin often worn in his youth as he thought back to his younger years. He said this whole continent was one big mountain. We were merely at one of its summits. To discover what truly was to be faced in life, we needed to discover all it had to give us. I don't claim to understand such grand ideals, but then call me a simple man, plenty content watching over our little home as it is right now. The relic sparkled as it bathed in the light of the morning sun. Down Raiju and even a demon. But he is now, think he'll more than understand what you meant by the end of his journey. Chunlin had seen off Sayu and Dao 2 days after the Oni's defeat. As soon as their wounds were healed, they felt it their duty to rejoin their people. Let them know the threat that plagued them was no more, and make their way to their shrine. He found it strange just how much he learned about them when he reflected back on that brief 2-day period of recovery. There they had been, forced to uncover one another's combative strengths and weaknesses out of necessity, placing a deep trust in one another that would ordinarily take years to develop. And then there they were, the storm that brought them together having passed. It was upon this respite that both sides realized they hardly knew who the other was at all. They then gathered around the table as friends, teaching each other their ways in detail. From there, Chunlin learned much about the woodland wanderers beyond what he saw in that book, and Sayu and Dao listened with gripping interest about the many traditions of the Matage around them. Their conversation sparked his desire to depart. There had been a reason Sayu walked her path, something behind her unshakable faith that her every action along that path held meaning, and it stemmed from the vagabond Matage and the book he gave her. Though its lengthy contents, Sayu grew increasingly curious about how her people fit into the puzzle around them, wondering if she could unveil new meaning to their ways by discovering a more personal purpose through them. Chunlin hoped for much the same. If he could discover more about himself through the new path he was choosing to walk, would he too be able to return home a more complete person and put his experiences to use? Their goals were not to do away with old traditions, but to find new ways to celebrate them by creating better selves. The two swore that they would meet one another again, not just as friends, but as sides that would continue to inspire one another to new heights. Chunlin dearly hoped that by the time their paths crossed, he would be the kind of person who could expand Sayu's world that much more, bringing yet another dimension to her ever-growing journey. The world was a very big place. From their brief interaction, even the small world Chunlin had always known, snowy mountain slopes and its many winding trails, where it was seen in a new light. He could learn so much from what he thought familiar. What else could he gain from running wild and taking in the great unknown? Sai told him that the vagabond saw the world as one big mountain. I was fucking right! If Chunlin saw it that way, then he was merely off to explore this mountain's many slopes, on the hunt for prey not yet seen. Despite its grander scale, this journey and his actions and essence were still so very like a Matage's. I'm media literate! See you when I see you, Chunlin thought to himself of the woodland wanderer, eagerly awaiting the day he could be the second Matage in her life to unequivocally shift her life's course for the better. No Matage could sleep through the warren of the beasts in the night. Chunlin Izan, now officially a vagabond, had been wavering on the border of dreams regarding the day of his departure one moment, and the next he was on his feet in the bed of a mini pickup truck, his trusted Subaru, his old-fashioned muzzleloader held firmly in his hands. Every surrounding truck that made up a caravan had skidded to a similar halt, their cargo bed passengers being jerked awake from bunk burrs, being smacked in minor collisions from the unexpected stop. Chunlin scanned the surrounding area for any irregularities, picking up the source quickly, a sloth of unidentified bears surrounding the truck leading the caravan. Oh no, the bears! Not the bears! With incredible haste, he then leaped from the bed of the truck and rushed forward to assist them. He could have sat in silence and waited for the danger to pass while admiring the tiny peak of Mount White Crown still visible in the far-off distance. That simply was not who he was. His instinctive habit of diving headfirst into helping others persisted, even beyond the home he left behind. Once something he thought of as patronizing or unnecessary, he now fully celebrated it from the experiences it could gift him in retrospect. His journey had only just begun, but where on this mountain Chunlin would go he did not know. All he could say for certain, that by the time he reunited with his heroic friends somewhere along its meandering slopes, he'd be a prouder self for it. That was really good. I don't know, man. It might actually be better than 3 and 9. I mean, that's recency bias, but I really, really like that. Like, a lot. It's very good. I really hope Chunlin's a character going forward, because I would kind of hate to see all that, because I mean, that's like a lot of great characterization and setup for a character. Like, I feel like at the very least, I'm like, every character should get a book. That should be the thing going forward. Every character gets a book. Because it is such a good way to, like... It's part of the reason... Because, I mean, basically, in a way, a daydream... Or, like, the books are just like a daydream, right? Like, what I want the daydreams to be. And so, like, imagine if every character... Maybe not necessarily that long, right? It doesn't need to be 3 hours long to read or whatever. Or it's, 3 hours to read out loud. If you're reading that on your own, you can probably knock it out in like an hour, but, faster or slower depending on your reading speed, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. It is just it does showcase like how much more you can kind of do in these like super focused sections. And it does make me wish that like it would be cool if like every character got like a book, which is something that like, daydreams could kind of do. And some of them kind of do that, like for instance with the chickadee in the Beyond the Reverie thing. I don't remember her name, but I mean, she's kind of for sure a major character going forward, I presume. Also presumably the love interest, I would guess, of the new protagonist would be my whole assertion there, based on the vague way they talked about her childhood friend type thing. But like that's a really good way to like set up some initial characterization, like really being able to get inside their headspace and seeing a bit of like an origin story for them is really cool. And I enjoyed it all the way through. I think having the 3 characters was also nice. Just like some extra points of like conversation and stuff like that to keep things interesting. It flowed well. I think that's maybe one thing that it had over Red Moon Rose, is Red Moon Rose was just the 2 characters, and honestly, they weren't that memorable. Like I just remember there's like a guy, and his thing is that he's just like a dude. And there's Roselia. I mean, she's cool in the book, at least. No offense, real Roselia. I mean, Let's be honest, if it's intended. What was I gonna say? I don't know, like, I feel like it didn't drag as much as Red Moon Rose did to me. Despite being longer. And I think part of that is that, I felt like I was a little bit more interested in Chunlin's character, I think. We really, really got into his mind space in a way that, I mean, granted, I don't really remember Red Moon Rose that well. I remember liking it at the time, other than it just being a little too long and kind of slow at times. But yeah, definitely some cool stuff. Also getting, you know, a little bit of like lore stuff going forward, presumably, with the Matage and whatnot. Presumably they'll kind of be like, you know, Nord. Where is it? Any Nords around here? No. There's something else I wanted to say. I don't know. Definitely good. I enjoyed it. Big fan. And that should be the last of the bonus videos. So Reverie is done and dusted completely now. And I believe so. I can't think of anything else that we're gonna do. Will be a discussion video that should still happen. I haven't quite finished my notes. I have like a little bit left to do, and then I'll probably record that in the next couple of days. We'll do that. Then, I mean, I still want to do a tier list, but that's, you know, it's a big endeavor, so it's much easier for me to be lazy and say, I want to do that. And I do want to do it, but, you know, it's a much larger endeavor than the discussion video. So it should probably still happen, but if it never happens, well, you know why. With that being said, I'm Extra Cheese 87. Stay tuned for future videos. And bye, guys.